Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Green Flag. I'm your host, Lucas Wacker, and with me, as always, we have Kyle Cushman. And this was a very entertaining weekend of racing, both on the NASCAR side of things, IndyCar, obviously, with crowning a champion, and a record-setting weekend in Formula One in Portugal. So lots to discuss today, but we don't have a NASCAR Cup race to discuss, Kyle, because it's rain delayed, and it's still rain delayed. It's postponed until Tuesday currently at 12 p.m. Eastern, so 9 a.m. my time, 12 p.m. your time. So we're still waiting on the NASCAR Cup Series. They got about 50 laps
Probably gonna be waiting
on Sunday.
longer. Yeah.
And it looks like this could be a while here before we even get to see the results of the second race in the round of 8. But we still have plenty of other things to talk about in today's show. So first off, how are you doing today, Kyle, after a very, very great weekend of racing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. A little bit busy, but you know what? NASCAR deciding to rain the entire, basically as soon as the truck race stopped, missed everywhere. They somehow ran 50 laps, and then, of course, we know what happened after that. So opened up the schedule a little bit, which was nice for me, so I could get a little bit of extra work done before it was necessarily due on Monday and Tuesday coming up here. But I'm doing good. I'm hoping that we can finally get this race in at some point. Maybe not tomorrow, because if it happens at noon, then I'm just going to miss all of it because of class. So I'm hoping for a Wednesday start. That would be basically best case scenario, because then we can talk about it on Thursday. We're all set and good, but it's probably looking like we're going to be racing on Thursday if we even do.
Yeah, it's going to be a while here before we know what's happening with the Cup Series. Credit to the Air Titans and all the drivers there that are doing that, and of trying to get the track as dry as possible so that the guys can go out there and race. But there was not for the lack of effort on their part, but just Mother Nature has not been cooperating with the NASCAR Cup Series this weekend. At least they've got the other two series done and dusted.
We had a nice little stretch there without any rain delays or anything. And the one weekend it did rain, we got a nice rain race, the first time in the Cup Series, a great race on the Xfinity side, and it really was just kind of it was due, and it's unfortunate that it's going to last this long. I can't remember the last time we had a rain delay last until like Tuesday, maybe even to Wednesday and Thursday, but
there's never been one to Wednesday. I know that. There's been one to Tuesday.
Go.
The last time was the 2012 Daytona 500, if I remember correctly.
Ooh, okay.
That Matt Kenseth one.
Yes.
that went real late there.
Prime time,
Yeah, that was a real late one. But the weather down in Florida is obviously unpredictable. Who would have thought Texas and a little bit of misty rain is going to be the thing that prevents us from seeing that race?
Jeez.
But from what we saw in the other two races, Kyle, it seemed like the Cup Series race was going to be very, very entertaining.
What we saw a little bit beforehand was pretty good too.
Yeah, we're getting denied here, but hopefully when they get back out on track, whatever they decide to do, I mean, it's going to take a lot for them to turn the ship around in terms of if they have a race on Wednesday or Thursday to get all the production cameras and everything like that and everything that they need to race to Martinsville on the Saturday and Sunday, because they've got a triple header at Martinsville for the first time since 2006. So it's been a long time, but that's looking way down the road. We'll have a race recap of the Texas race whenever they decide to do it.
Whenever it happens.
I've seen a lot of things on what they could do with scheduling, but that's up in the air right now. But for what we know currently, the race is postponed until tomorrow on Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern time. So I'm glad it wasn't actually today, because I had to wake up at 7 o'clock, and it would have been just me groggy watching the race. And I'm kind of glad that it's postponed another day. I won't miss it like Kyle does, because I don't have anything to worry about tomorrow. But yeah, hopefully the race is sooner rather than later. But we've got plenty of other things to discuss today. We'll talk about that later on this week. But we'll start off with news that broke this morning here, Kyle, with crew chief announcement for the number 24 Hendrick Motorsports Chevrolet driven by William Byron. He's got a new crew chief with Chad now stepping down from the box after the season is done. Rudy Fugle is going to come atop the pit box for William Byron for 2021. A massive, massive leap for Rudy Fugle here, from going from the NASCAR Gander RV and Outdoors Truck Series to KBM for Kyle Busch Motorsports to the Cup Series level with William Byron. But the two have had their previous history together, as Fugle was atop the pit box for Byron when he raced for KBM in the Truck Series back in 2016. So It's been a little while since they've worked together, but Byron and him had great success winning 7 races with each other that season. And obviously, Byron was denied a chance at the championship that year, unfortunately, with a blown engine in the penultimate race at Phoenix. He would have won the championship that year if not for that catastrophic engine failure. Unfortunate for Byron on that occasion, but he's getting a chance for redemption here with Rudy Fugle, and it's a great snag by Hendrick Motorsports here. Fugle, just quickly on his stats, he's got 5 owners championships in the truck series for KBM and 2 drivers championships, that coming with Eric Jones and Christopher Bell, right? Correct? I think that's right. Those are the 2 champions for the truck series.
I should know 99% certain that's correct.
Yeah, Bell and Jones. I'm going to stick with that. I don't want to seem like I don't know my stuff. I think that's got to be correct because I don't think anybody else for KBM has won a truck series title. But this is huge news here, Kyle.
It is Jones and Bell.
Oh, yeah, I know my stuff. All right. Fugle making this big jump. He's had great success at the truck series level. It's obviously a totally different kind of car or truck, excuse me, on that side of things. So to go from that big of a leap is quite the undertaking for himself. But this is quite the chemistry that Byron and Fugle have created over their one season with each other back in 2016, Kyle.
I am a huge fan of this move for Hendrick Motorsports. I kind of thought that maybe we'd see somebody from Junior Motorsports maybe get the jump up to Hendrick Motorsports, just given the obvious ties between the organizations there. But to go out and get Rudy Fugle, kind of take a bit of a jump of faith there, just given that he is going from the truck series to the Cup series in terms of crew chiefing, which is definitely not going to be easy for him. But given the level of success that he's had at that level and his history with William Byron, I think that this is a superb hire. It clearly wasn't really working all that well with Chad Knaus. It just kind of seems like this generation of car maybe just wasn't, this package just maybe didn't click with what Chad Knaus was renowned for back in the day with Jimmy Johnson, and they were fine. William Byron was getting decent results, but they haven't really taken that next step that we've kind of expected from them. They haven't necessarily shown the same flashes that Alex Bowman has, and we kind of expect similar-ish results from the two of them. So to go out and get somebody like Rudy Fugle, who has that high-end potential, and just given what he's done in the truck series, I love this move. And I kind of we talked about it a little bit on the last show when we were talking about Jerry Baxter coming in and what he was able to do for Bubba Wallace this season. And I'm kind of getting some parallels here, given that Jerry Baxter came from the Kyle Busch program, came up to the Cup Series with Bubba Wallace, and we saw them have a dramatic increase in performance. Obviously, the qualifier there being they got a lot more sponsorship dollars, so that definitely helps as well. But the crew chief has to do something with that better equipment as well. And just given how dominant Rudy Fugle's trucks have largely been over his entire career in the truck series, I think that this could be a very, very good marriage going forwards for Hendrick Motorsports. I'm really excited about this possibility.
Yeah, I am. I as a Kyle Busch Motorsports, enthusiast, I guess it's a bit of a tough one to swallow here for that organization. But this is I think it's going to be.
Didn't he go 5 for 5 last year with Kyle Busch?
Yeah, so he's incredible. So Fugle has taken that role over there since Rick Wren and everybody kind of left that organization. Rudy Fugle has become like the headmaster over there in terms of being that crew chief on the 51 truck, where they can kind of experiment with setups and give Kyle the best chance of winning when he goes into the trucks on that rare occasion. And he's obviously had Chandler Smith in the truck this season on large parts too. So it's been a coaching role for Fugle in that sense. So he's tried to help develop Smith with giving him good trucks that build in adjustability into it too. So I think he's a great match with Byron. We saw the success that they had before, like I mentioned earlier. It's a great snag by Hendrick Motorsports. Definitely one that is coming out of left field for sure. You would not think that a crew chief really necessarily makes that jump up from the trucks to the Cup Series, especially when they're not aligned in either way with manufacturer or anything like that. So it's just the former relationship there with Byron. You wonder if he maybe had a bit of a say into it, if he wanted to experiment with Fugle back atop of the pit box for him because of the previous success. So lots of different elements to this decision, I'd say, for Hendrick Motorsports, but I don't think that this can go in a bad situation here for them. I think Chad Knaus has done an admirable job with Byron for sure. They got their first win this past season, so he's done almost everything that he can do atop the pit box. It hasn't been the greatest success, but let's not forget that was the previous 5 team that struggled. So it is a bit of a tough one to maybe expect that jump, even with Chad Knaus atop the pit box. So it is an interesting decision here by Hendrick Motorsports, but I'm a big fan of this move.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there. And the one thing that I thought that maybe could happen is obviously we expect Kyle Larson to take that 4th seat at Hendrick Motorsports. And we didn't know whether Cliff Daniels would stay with whoever's stepping in Jimmy Johnson's place in the Hendrick stable, or if he would switch over to maybe William Byron or something. Obviously, that's not happening here. And I kind of like that decision here to go out and get somebody that's one of the better crew chief prospects, I would probably say, in NASCAR right now, just given the level of success that he's had with young drivers in the Truck Series and even veterans, obviously, last year having such a great 5-race season with Kyle Busch there running the table. So I do like that they're kind of going back to that season where William Byron was arguably his most dominant, winning 7 races in that truck season, obviously not winning the championship, but probably the best season that he's had so far in the NASCAR ranks. You might argue the Xfinity Championship, but the win total there, it really stands out in the Truck Series. So for me, I love this move. I like going back to a partnership that's worked in the past and taking a gamble on a guy that has deserved a shot for a couple of years now. So all across the board, I really, really like this move.
Yeah, on the Hendrick Motorsports side of things, there on that open spot that we expect Kyle Larson to fill. You know, I was thinking, just as we were talking just now, that Chad Johnston got he got fired essentially from the top of the pit box for the 42 car. So I wonder if Larson maybe looks at Johnson to come back and be his crew chief, because they did have good success together. And then maybe that leaves Cliff Daniels on the outside. I'm not going to speculate or anything. There has been any sort of...
I'd like to see Daniels with Larson, if that is what the route that they go down. I think that Cliff Daniels has done a really solid job this year with Jimmy Johnson. They've had speed at times, but it's kind of been bad luck, driver error at times. There's just been, we all know about the season that Jimmy Johnson's had, for crying out loud. But I would like to see how that partnership would work, at least for a season or at least a partial season. I'd like to see how that works.
No, for sure. I don't want to put that. I don't want to seem like I want Johnston instead of Daniels, but just something to think about.
Option.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens on that side of the garage for the 48 or whatever number that they want to go with for next season. Obviously not the 48, but the current 48 car.
Give me the 25, baby. Give me the 25.
25, 5, 57 for Larson's
I don't want to see the
number.
5 again. I don't want to see the 5 again.
Why not? This is 5 and 25.
I just think of Casey Kane underperforming.
I think of Mark Martin overachieving. How about that?
Okay.
Huh?
Okay.
Glass half empty kind of guy, huh? All right.
But come on, it's been so long since we saw the 25.
When I think of 25, I think of Brian Vickers turning Jimmy Johnson and Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Casey Mears winning the Coke 600 in 2007. Excuse
If I'm
me.
being honest, I just want 25 because that's my birthday number and I like the number.
Oh, okay. All right. Now he's honest. He lets it out. All right.
Okay.
But, that kind of wraps up the Rudy Fugle kind of thing there. Yeah. We know Kyle's favorite number and everything.
I'm excited to see how that plays out next year.
Yeah, very, very it's going to be a very great storyline to watch for next season in terms of if there is a big jump in performance by the 24 car with Byron next season with a new crew chief. So we'll stick with the kind of Hendrick Motorsports kind of mold here, Kyle, with Jimmy Johnson. He's going over to IndyCar next season on a almost full-time basis, running the road course and street course circuit. He hasn't confirmed if he's going to run the Indy 500 next season. I think that'll be maybe later down the road, but he seems a bit tentative on that side of things with the safety and everything like that. He doesn't want to take any risks at this stage in his life, which is totally understandable. Just the fact that he's coming over to IndyCar is a great thing for that sport. But he was, looking for a full-time sponsor for next season, and he finally has one. They announced it on Saturday afternoon. It is Carvana. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Sounds
it's
right.
it's a new way to buy cars, essentially, is what their slogan is, and it's something that's never been in motorsports before. It's a brand new sponsor into the sport, which is great to see that we're bringing in new sponsorships. Johnson has a way of doing this. He brought in Ally when he lost his sponsorship with Lowe's when they ended their partnership. Now he brings in a new one in Carvana, and that he will drive the number 48 for Chip Ganassi Racing as well. So bringing that number over from the Cup Series to the IndyCar side of things. So it's great to see that Jimmie Johnson finally gets a full-time sponsor for next season. So he's got nothing else to worry about. He can focus on his development and getting to grips with the car. He's doing some tests later on, I believe this month at Barber. And then after that, I think Laguna Seca, if I'm not mistaken. But I could be wrong on that. But thoughts here, Kyle, on a new sponsor for Jimmie Johnson?
Yeah, anytime that you can get a new company into motorsports is fantastic. So that's great to see. Obviously, there were like the hopes and dreams of like Lowe's or something, and that was never going to happen. But the main thing is that it's great to see that it is going to be the 48 and that there was no hiccups with that. And yes, it'll be the Chip Ganassi fonts and everything like that, but that's what you expect. It's not going to be the Hendrick.
Give me it in neon yellow. That's it.
It needs to be the neon yellow. But at the end of the day, sponsor everything included. It's kind of the same as what we were talking about with 2311 racing the last couple of weeks. It's all fine and dandy. The name, the sponsor, the colors, whatever. What really matters is the paint scheme, right? And
we just want to make it look good.
It'll be fun to see what they come up with. Carvana there. They've got some interesting colors that you can maybe do something with. I'm kind of expecting probably something similar to what Felix Rosenquist has kind of run for the most part. Maybe a black primary with like some light blue hints or something along those lines, I think could look pretty slick. So excited to see how that comes out. I've seen a couple of mock-ups on Twitter, which have looked pretty nice. But at the end of the day, great to see a new sponsor in motorsports, and obviously almost full-time basis with Jimmie Johnson next year, which is great to see.
Yeah, Jimmy you can tell the enthusiasm and the energy is really picking up on his side of things, looking forward to next season. He was watching the finale of the IndyCar race when NASCAR had their red flag on the monitor. So he was watching Scott Dixon, his soon-to-be teammate, being crowned a champion. So that was pretty cool to see. And I'm really pumped for Jimmy's next chapter here. Obviously, the last couple of seasons have not gone the way that he would have hoped for.
Putting it lightly.
That's an understatement. But hopefully he's running second right now as they stand for the last 24 hours he has been. So we'll see how he does when the Texas race unfolds. Don't count out the 48 yet. He looks strong early on in the Cup Series race. So this is great to see for Carvana coming in. A company I've never really heard before, that's for sure. But it's great.
Hey, that's the point of advertisement.
It's great exposure for them. So it's. I think this is a mutual agreement that can benefit both parties. So it's going to be very, very fun to see Jimmie Johnson in an IndyCar next season. So he's got his plans, his sponsor, his number, his team. He's got everything down on lock. He just needs to go out there and drive the car for next season. So
I can't wait.
Very
That's going to be so
for
much
Jimmie
fun.
Johnson.
Oh.
There's a lot of superstars coming over to IndyCar next season.
Yeah.
And I'll finish up the NASCAR side of things here with the news quickly here, Kyle. Tyler Ankrum and Sheldon Creed will return to GMS next season in the Truck Series. So just a couple of keeps there. But then on the other side of things, Brett Moffitt was not confirmed to be back in the Truck Series. They haven't said anything on him yet. We don't know if he will be back in that truck for next season. But he's run a lot of occasion in the O2 in the Xfinity Series, so maybe that's the next step for him in his NASCAR progression. Obviously, a former Truck Series champion. He's advanced to the championship for already this season. So Brett Moffitt, I think he's kind of done everything he can in the Truck Series. If he goes out there and gets the championship even this season, I think that's basically done and dusted for him to probably move up at some point here for next season. But Tyler Ankrum and Sheldon Creed doing a great job this season for GMS, and they are returning to the organization next year, Kyle.
Yeah, this is probably best case scenario for GMS here. It was unfortunate for them to basically lose out on Sam Mayer. They won't get a full-time season out of him, which is probably one that stings a little bit for them, given how much time they've put into developing him, obviously running the ARCA car for him, and in part-time duty in the Truck Series. So missing out on him for a full-time championship run is going to hurt a little bit. But being able to retain Zane Smith, obviously announced a 2 weeks ago, something like that. And then Sheldon Creed and Tyler Ankrum as well is fantastic. It's the youngest and arguably best driver lineup in the truck series. You've got Zane Smith, who really looks like he's going to be a stud sometime here in the future, going up the ranks in NASCAR. Sheldon Creed has a fascinating background of off-road trucking and has been fantastic this season in spurts, has shown really, really strong flashes this season in the truck series. So being able to retain those two, as well as Tyler Ankrum, who's younger, still isn't 20 yet, but kind of that more raw prospect who you're kind of waiting to see what he becomes. Retaining those three is huge. And obviously for GMS, you would want to keep Brett Moffitt. Brett Moffitt obviously wants to kind of jump up the ladder in NASCAR. And unfortunately for him, I don't really see a scenario where he gets a Cup Series ride straight out of Truck Series. So he needs to go and do something in the Xfinity Series most likely. And it kind of seems like we might be going down that path, because it is interesting that 3 out of the 4 GMS full-time trucks have been announced so far. And it's the 3 young guys that maybe you would have thought could have gotten a shot in an Xfinity car or something like that, maybe with Colleague, given the previous GMS and Chevrolet ties. Obviously, Justin Haley being the primary one there that has gone from GMS up to Colleague. But Brett Moffitt remains the only one. So interested to see what Moffitt does here going into next season, if he does stay in the Truck Series, if he gambles on a mid-pack car in the Xfinity Series, or what happens there. Maybe even a backmarker car in the Cup Series or something, like Spider Motorsports has a couple seats potentially to fill there. So a lot of different options there for Brett Moffitt, but great to see GMS keep those 3 young talented drivers in their stable. And I would not be surprised if we see 2 out of the 3 of those in the championship for once again next year.
Yeah, it's looking like that could be the case with Creed locking himself in this past weekend, and then Zane Smith putting himself in all the right situations going forward here into Martinsville, although it is a track he has never raced on before in his career. So that could be a little bit of a learning opportunity for the youngster in the number 21 truck. So great. Congrats to Ankrum and Creed getting their future secured there at GMS. It's a great learning opportunity for them to go back to the Truck Series and go for another shot at the championship next season if Creed doesn't even go get it this season. So we'll move on here to the last bit of NASCAR news, and it was confirmed that the Xfinity Series and the NASCAR soon-to-be Camping World Truck Series again will be racing at the Circuit of Americas, or COTA, at their inaugural weekend next year. Obviously, the Cup Series was confirmed in their recently released schedule that we broke down. The Xfinity Series and the Truck Series will also be there that weekend. The layout is still to be determined. I've seen where they have the long one and the short one in a picture, so we'll see what they decide to do with that. But very, very pumped that COTA's getting the opportunity here, and NASCAR's getting the opportunity to showcase their talents on the nicest probably road course in the United States, if not one of them. So very, very pumped to see that these 2 series are still going to adding to the road course schedule for themselves as well, and an already packed road course schedule for the Xfinity Series. It's going to be very, very fun to watch even more road racing next year, Kyle.
Yeah, given the fact that the Cup Series has really expanded their road course package over the course of the season, I'm glad that we're seeing at least one here added to both the Xfinity and Truck Series levels, specifically the trucks, because if there's going to be 6 races on road courses in the Cup Series going forwards, they need to gain road course experience previous to that, and not everybody has the Ford development model where they ship you out to an IMSA ride for a couple times like they have done so far with obviously Austin Cindric's kind of his separate own case. He kind of does whatever the hell he wants. But you have Chase Briscoe who's done stuff, even Haley Deegan coming up now going to do some IMSA stuff. So not everybody has those opportunities. So it's going to be cool to see more road courses at the lower levels, and especially the Truck Series. I'm excited to see that one. But remains to be seen what the layout's going to be. I really have no clue what to expect in terms of the racing there. It could be fantastic and blow expectations out of the water, or it could be maybe lackluster because it is kind of that bigger track that's designed for open wheel, not necessarily for stock cars and NASCAR. So going to be interesting to see how it goes, but I do like the fact that we're giving it 3 kind of kicks at the can next year and kind of see what sticks.
Yeah, I'm thinking that they should go to the short layout. To be honest, I think it would just make the racing more compact, and it wouldn't let the field get so spread out. And I'm just hoping that in the final corner, that we get a bump and run or something, because that corner definitely presents the opportunity for someone to drive it in deep and hope it sticks. So it's going to be very, very fun to watch some of the younger prospects try and tackle that challenging track, and in the Cup Series on the Sunday race as well. So it's going to be a great opportunity there for COTA to get more exposure to stock car racing as well as a circuit, and then NASCAR expanding their road course capabilities as well. So that was the NASCAR side of news and notes from this past couple of days. We'll move to the IndyCar side of things here, Kyle, with some silly season stuff on their end. Scott McLaughlin has been confirmed to run the full IndyCar season in 2021 for Team Penske, and as a result of that, Penske will pull out of the supercar team that they have down in Australia that McLaughlin drove for. So this is obviously McLaughlin made his debut this past weekend at St. Petersburg. Unfortunately, didn't go the way he would have liked to, but he showed some promising signs in practice, and he had some pace, and he said that he loved it too. So it was very, very fun to see the enthusiasm that he shared this past weekend. But in the number 3 car as well, obviously made famous by Helio Castroneves in that one. So big opportunity here for the youngster, I guess, even at 29 years old, and Scott McLaughlin. It's crazy to think that he's even that young and this talented, in a sense, to come over to IndyCar and basically have no break from the supercar side of things, and went in and jumped right in and did a great job this past weekend. So I'm very, very excited to see Scott McLaughlin in IndyCar full-time next season, Kyle.
Yeah, it's been well documented these last few weeks how big of a fan I am of this guy, and it's great to see him get the full-time ride. But not just that Penske will be a 4-car full-time stable next year. It's not like McLaughlin is taking one of Will Power or Simon Pagenaud's rides or anything like that. We're going to have 4 full-time Penske cars, which is going to be really, really fun to watch as well. And yeah, McLaughlin, obviously, he's a very raw driver for IndyCar. We know his talents in supercars, but it's a very different beast here in IndyCar. And we kind of saw that this past weekend where he kind of went in guns a-blazing, coming straight off of the Bathurst 1000 in the Supercars Championship there. And we saw some flashes. We saw him do really good at times and kind of goof a couple other times. So it'll be great for him to get this full off season in which he can fully prepare for a full-time IndyCar season, taking from this past weekend where he got a little bit more seat time and go into next year looking to win Rookie of the Year, if not win some races, and who knows what can happen from there. But I'm very excited to see what McLaughlin can do next year. And obviously the other side of it, it's always unfortunate when you see somebody pull out of motorsports, regardless as to what it is. It's unfortunate that Penske won't be staying over in Australia in the V8 supercars. But the silver lining to it is that team will remain in existence with Dick Johnson just running it as his own. So instead of it being DJR Penske, it'll be just Dick Johnson Racing now. And actually, they're going to have a full new lineup for next year. Excited to see what they can do, kind of moving on from this era of Penske, with obviously Scott McLaughlin coming over to IndyCar, and then them moving on from Fabian Coulthard as well. So the other important thing here to note is that Scott McLaughlin will still be driving in the Bathurst 1000. It doesn't conflict with any IndyCar schedule, so he'll be a co-driver with DJR Racing next year, which is going to be very fun to see then. But it's just kind of a best-case scenario for everyone involved. Penske pulls out of supercars, but keeps the guy that they've kind of developed over these past few years and get them in their main program here in IndyCar, and then that program in Australia still remains in existence. So very excited to see McLaughlin next year, see what DJR can do next year in supercars as well.
Very well said. I'm very, very. This is a great opportunity for Scott McLaughlin and Penske to gain some international exposure here. Maybe bring some Australian fans over with him there. I'm sure that's going to be the case. But it was a good debut for Scott McLaughlin. Not a great one. Had some spins and thrills, I guess you could say, throughout the weekend. But a full season under his belt next season will do him wonders. And who knows what the expectations could be for the rookie driver in IndyCar next season. He's going to go for that Rookie of the Year honors, which will be very, very fun to watch. So just to wrap things up on the IndyCar side of things here, 2 drivers will be returning to their organizations. In Takuma Sato will be returning to Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing, and then Rinus VeeKay, who recently, this past weekend, won the Rookie of the Year honors in IndyCar, will be returning to Ed Carpenter Racing. So 2 great keeps there. Obviously, Takuma Sato wins the Indy 500 this season, and then Rinus VeeKay wins the Rookie of the Year honors. So 2 talented drivers there have really stepped it up this season. Obviously, Rinus VeeKay has done wonders in that equipment this year, and then Takuma Sato is no joke when he's on his A game. So 2 great keeps there for both organizations, Kyle.
Yeah, there was some thought that maybe Takuma Sato coming off of the Indy 500 and being in a contract year could maybe go over and find maybe Andretti again, try that ship again. And there was just a lot of different speculation, but at the end, I think it's best for him to go back to RLL, stay in that number 30 car and kind of keep what they've got going there. It's a nice marriage. It's been fantastic for both parties. Obviously, the Indy 500s being the star of that. And it just makes sense to stay there, as does at Carpenter Racing, keeping Rinus VeeKay in the full-time seat. Showed some really, really strong flashes this past season as kind of a guy that maybe flew under the radar coming into the season. So I'm excited to see what he can do in his sophomore season. And as well, obviously, Ed Carpenter is going to run the ovals, but Connor Daly will stay in the 20 as well, running the road course schedule as well for them. So Ed Carpenter Racing, they're all locked and loaded for next year, as is Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing. They do have that test coming up with Antonio Felix da Costa, but he's signed through next year in Formula E. So maybe in a year's time we see something else happen between those 2 teams or something like that. But for now, I really like both of those re-signings.
Yeah, the organizations cannot be more pleased with the results that those 2 drivers have had this season. So it makes sense to keep them, and the fact that they wanted to come back as well is a key part of that as well. So obviously there's a lot of synergy at those 2 places for both the driver and the team, and it could lead to great things for both drivers for next season. Obviously, they're probably not championship contenders just yet, either of them, based off of equipment and or experience level, but I'm sure sooner down the road we'll have one of those cases to be the case. So we'll move on to the last bit of notes here, Kyle. It's a little bit of a different one that we don't usually talk about, the dirt track scene, with Kyle Larson shutting down his dirt track team that he's been running this season on a consistent basis, as he has been suspended by NASCAR, but recently has been reinstated for next season, lining up his return to stock car racing. But Larson will continue to race dirt on his own, but this just means that the team's shutting down, and it's an unfortunate loss for the dirt track scene, as it has had great success over its years, but this is just a new venture for Larson, probably trying to focus on his Cup Series for next season and not have as many distractions. And with the pandemic coming, it didn't help with the funding and the sponsorships and the money that goes into creating these cars and the amount of funds that it needs to maintain that level of performance. So it just made sense for Larson on the business side of things, unfortunately, and it's a big loss to the dirt track scene. But if Larson comes back to Cup Series, it's not the end of the world for his sake on the dirt track side of things. But just a disappointing news story that came out earlier this weekend, Kyle.
Yeah, it's unfortunate to see as I said earlier, anytime somebody pulls out of a motorsport, it's unfortunate to see. And given Kyle Larson's involvement in the dirt track scene, it's really sad to see. Obviously, it's nice that Kyle Larson will still race from time to time with I forget the name of the team that he races part-time with. But he'll still do some of those, but won't be involved in an owner for right now, which is unfortunate to see. Hopefully he can get back involved down the road when his schedule is probably a lot lesser than it is right now, just given the chaos of reinstatement, still not yet confirmed at Hendrick Motorsports or anything like that. And the COVID, there's just so much going on right now, probably in his life, that he doesn't really need the hassle of owning the team right now. So unfortunate for now. Hopefully we can see that return sometime down the road.
One thing that we did see over the past weekend as well, a little bit of a tidbit here, Alex Bone with a bit of a dirt track sneak here. So potentially if Larson comes over there, does Hendrick go into the dirt track scene? Who knows? That's obviously a long shot, but we exchanged text on that when it came out. So it was, I just wanted to throw that in there as a little bit of food for thought as we go into the off season here. So that's all the news and notes that I've got here, Kyle. So I think we go straight into IndyCar to start off today's episode, because they had a champion crowned this past weekend. So we'll just give a quick recap on the race itself, and then we'll discuss on the champion and everything that it means for himself. So we'll start off with kind of later on in the race, because there was a lot of action that went on throughout. It was a great race for a championship finale. Lots of comers and goers, lots of different pit strategies, lots of different incidents as well, with drivers going off track and coming on certain occasions that were a bit questionable, specifically what we'll talk about later in James Hinchcliffe. But Will Power was on pole, but he seemed to have issues kind of from the get-go, led a little bit and then kind of fell back through the field, had a little bit of mechanical troubles is what I heard over the radio, but he would actually bring up the first caution on lap 36 after hitting the wall, and then he would suffer, obviously, like I said, with the mechanical failures as well. He was not pleased with himself after the incident, so through his gloves, he was disappointed in himself. And unfortunately for the, I guess, is he Australian or New Zealand? I'm totally blanking here.
Will Power is Australian.
Yeah, right. And then, yeah, okay, that was my bad there. But he was obviously a bit fiery there after it all, and how could he not be? It was just a driver mistake. It was nothing that he could have. Everything was in his control, and it was unfortunate to see his season that has been up and down on many occasions, has gone to victory lane on a couple of occasions, but on some end of the spectrum, he's just been in the garage area, ended and wrecked early. So unfortunate start to the race there for Will Power. And then it doesn't get any better for Team Penske, as Scott McLaughlin and Rinus VeeKay, the two guys we had just talked about there, come together on the restart, bringing up the caution as well. McLaughlin was a bit too antsy, I'd say, trying to make a bold move into turn one there and just kind of overextended his reach. And unfortunately, Rinus VeeKay was the innocent bystander, Kyle.
Yeah, it was unfortunate to see. It was a bit of a lunge, to say the least. If he had more experience in the car, maybe he could have made it stick. Just wasn't necessarily used to how the car reacts under those circumstances. Obviously being his first ever IndyCar race, and kind of binned it a little bit, but it was unfortunate to see. At least he got some experience before that with a couple restarts and everything like that. But unfortunate to see, but we got some entertainment before it at least.
Yeah, that's for sure. He definitely left it out on the track. He had some good practice laps. He went up to second at one point. He had a great weekend in the early parts of it. Just didn't quite come together on Sunday.
And that'll come with experience, right?
Yeah, he just lost under braking, just a bit too much rear brake into it, and then just lost the rear end. So unfortunate there for McLaughlin and VeeKay as well. But we'll move on here to Alexander Rossi. Has had a miserable season in 2020, as a lot of people have had a miserable year in 2020. But Alexander Rossi's side of things in motorsports has just not been the way that we expect Alexander Rossi to race. And this time he just spins out, getting loose into the marbles. He had a great run up to that point, leading for the majority of the race as well, after Power's early issues. And then he just got loose and would kind of just have no control of such a tight track there at St. Petersburg, hits the inside wall, then backs it into the other side of the wall. So it's unfortunate there for Rossi, a mistake, and he was in definitely contention for the win there on Sunday. Just ends his season winless for the first time in his IndyCar career as well. So a big loss there for Andretti Autosport to not get a win for Alexander Rossi this season. And this time it wasn't up to the pit crew or anything external circumstances with mechanical failures. This was just a driver error, Kyle.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it's been, driver error there. It's just been a completely forgettable season for Alexander Rossi here. It started off so brutal with 3 finishes, almost outside the top 15, a 15th place in Texas, but basically 3 finishes outside the top 15, and just was never really able to completely turn it around. We saw glimpses at Road America there with the 3rd place finish, and then it just kind of went back down. Obviously, the Gateway conundrum, I guess you would say. And then he kind of pulled it back together here recently, going into St. Pete with 4 straight podium finishes, but it probably should have came out with the win, if we're being honest, at St. Pete. Just did a little too much, but that's kind of what it's been all season long. It's a forgettable season. Just kind of take it, throw it in the trash, and move on for Alexander Rossi. It's going to be a real big test of his mental fortitude going into next season to see if he can rebound. But I hope he does, because anytime that Alexander Rossi is in contention for the championship in IndyCar, it just makes it better. So I hope we see that going into next season, because anytime that Rossi is finishing ninth in the championship, it's definitely a very disappointing season.
Yeah, he started off slow and then he regained his form, but then he would make mistakes.
Yeah.
Maybe himself or the team or the car or something just let him down in a particular race where he had speed. And then when he didn't have speed, it was very, very evident as well. So just a mixed bag of results for Rossi this season, and it culminated to still ninth in the championships, which is still kind of crazy to think after the season that he's had is still ninth
it was
compared
basically,
to what some other guys.
He has something go wrong and he finishes in like the early 20s, or he is really good and finishes inside the top 5. It was like the two polar opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, unfortunate there to end the 2020 season for Alexander Rossi, but it's a season that he's going to want to forget. And like Kyle said, it's going to really test himself going into next season if he can recover and rebound to the form that we all know that he can reach and what that team can reach, because he brings that car up just that little bit more. Reminds me a little bit of Max Verstappen and Red Bull in terms of just bringing that car up just that extra ounce compared to his teammates, and gets the most out of it. So we'll see how Rossi recovers, but it's going to be a long off season to think about what could have been at St. Pete and throughout the entire season. So that was one of the big incidents of the race, along with the next one here in James Hinchcliffe, obviously taking over for Zach Veach in the number 26 there for Andretti Autosport as well. He was running second on the restart, and then in the final corner, he gets loose, and then I don't know what the heck he was thinking here. He kind of, we usually see this where the guy just has to sit there and wait after he spins and let everybody go by, and he goes back to last. But obviously Hinchcliffe was just a little bit impatient and just went straight and tried to turn the car around, and it hit an innocent bystander in Jack Harvey as he was just trying to roll along, goes around the outside, did nothing wrong, and Hinch just doors him and knocks off Hinch's front wing, and he would suffer great damage from that. So unfortunate there for the Canadian. Showed a little bit of, rustiness, just a real error on Hinch's part. There's no real way to save what he did there. It's just an inexcusable mistake, I'd say, on his part, especially for a guy that was running very, very well up to that point. First off, with the getting loose in the final corner and then spinning it around, you don't see that from a top-end driver. I don't want to knock Hinchcliffe too much, but on this situation, it was just a culmination of errors that led to that unfortunate situation. And Jack Harvey did nothing wrong, just running his own race, goes around the outside of a spun car, and gets collected in the aftermath, Kyle.
Yeah, but I think it's warranted in this situation. It was two rookie mistakes from a driver that's very experienced in IndyCar. He was running up in second. Was obviously St. Pete has been one of his better tracks over his career, at least recently. And just a couple brutal mistakes. Spins under yellow and then gets back on track and runs into somebody. It's just two things that, one, you don't see very often, and two, are basically inexcusable. And I'm sure he was hard on himself afterwards, but when you've got basically 3 races to show what you got, looking for a full-time seat for next season after kind of unceremoniously being kicked out of your seat last year, it's just a tough way to end the season. And it's just kind of a culmination of what's been a couple rough seasons for James Hinchcliffe here. It seems like basically since that probably Iowa last year where he finished third, since then it's just been either mistakes or getting caught up in other people's wrecks or bad luck, all this kind of stuff. And it just culminated this time running second, has a chance for a podium finish in the final race of the year and really cement his claim that he should be full-time with Andretti next year. And instead he goes out, spins on under yellow, and then comes back on track and runs into somebody and loses his front wing. Just brutal mistake there. But I'm hoping that next year we get to see him full time, and maybe he doesn't have to try and run so hard and just do everything in one race. We get to see him over the course of a full season again in that top level equipment, hopefully with Andretti, and get to see what he can do there.
Yeah, for sure. It was just an unfortunate way to end the season here. I just
Oh,
hope he gets that full-time ride next season, because this has just been a rough go of things for. I mean, he's just been an underdog his entire career, just having to fight for everything he's got, and it's unfortunate to see him make a mistake like this and a golden opportunity to get a podium finish, maybe even a win if circumstances go his way. But this incident took him out of contention for the victory, a podium, and a decent finish, obviously. So unfortunate there for Hinchcliffe, as he would still continue running, but he would finish 14th in the end of things. So unfortunate there for the Canadian driver. We'll move on here to kind of the latter stages of the race here, as that kind of set off the final stint here. The camera showed it began to rain after that incident as well, so mix that in, but it didn't stay. It was just kind of a weird Florida weather spurt as per usual, but the rain did not come, even though the camera really freaked us out there for 2 seconds. A lot of stuff was going on. The Cup Series race was starting. IndyCar was going on in the heat of the battle with the championship, as Joseph Newgarden and Scott Dixon, after qualifying 8th and 11th respectively, had worked their way up through the pack. And it was kind of on from there, as Newgarden goes from 3rd to 1st on the restart. A beautiful switchback move in turn 1 on Colton Herta and Alex Palou. And then Dixon follows him through into 3rd place behind Herta and Newgarden. It was a great pass by Newgarden to even get him. He did everything right, basically. A difficult qualifying session for himself. Didn't get everything that he needed. If he had stayed up front maybe the entire race, we're looking at a different situation. But Dixon had one eye on Newgarden basically the entire race. None of them faltered throughout, and they put themselves in the right position at the end for Dixon to clinch the championship, and for Newgarden to try and put the pressure on Dixon to try and prevent him from winning his 6th championship. But Askew goes head on into the wall as well, and then Herta would miss a corner, taking him out of podium contention. So unfortunate there for the guy who ends up finishing 3rd in the championship overall in Colton Herta. Unfortunate there for Askew in his final race for Aaron McLaren as well, that they just kind of made those mistakes there late in the race as well. And then there would be a caution. The pace car would run out of gas too, so obviously a lot of cautions at St. Pete on Sunday. It just provokes a lot of hard racing, and some drivers made some mistakes. You wonder if that 3-week layoff, I think it was, from the last race, maybe had something to do with it as well. But it was challenging conditions out there for the drivers. But in the end, Joseph Newgarden did everything right to win St. Petersburg once again for the 2nd consecutive season. Pato O'Ward would actually get past Dixon late on and get into 2nd to get his 4th podium of the season. But Scott Dixon did enough to clinch his 6th IndyCar championship, putting him one shy of the all-time record held by the great A.J. Foyt. A great masterclass of driving for both drivers on Sunday. To see Newgarden fight as much as he could to get up through the pack, made some great passes, had a great strategy as well atop the pit box from Team Penske. And then Dixon just managed his race to perfection and put himself in a position where he didn't have to worry too much, never really fell back at all, just had Newgarden in his sights throughout the entire race, and didn't matter that he fell back to 2nd or 3rd or 4th or 5th or 6th or 7th or 8th or even 9th really at the end, because Newgarden didn't get the maximum 54 points with the pole and leading the most laps. So Dixon was incredible, unstoppable. That strong start to the season with 4 straight wins really propelled him to the championship. And I think it was four wins in 5 races. Is that correct? It was,
I believe so.
4 wins in 5 races there to start the season. So it was an incredible feat there for Scott Dixon, and looked unstoppable. But the fact that Newgarden came within 16 points at the end was really, really something to behold. They end up tied on the season in wins with 4 apiece, and Newgarden put quite the challenge on, put the pressure on, but 16 points would be the end result in the gap between the 2 drivers. So great result there for Scott Dixon, Kyle, and Chip Ganassi Racing, bringing home their 6th championship.
Yeah, just spectacular. The fact that not only was Scott Dixon able to avoid all the chaos that was the mid-pack there with the constant restarts and everything and the cautions, he was able to restart well, was able to pass when he needed to, was calculated and calm the entire race. and finished third in a race where he basically only needed to finish top 10. It was remarkable from Scott Dixon. And a shout out to Joseph Newgarden as well. Fantastic strategy from Penske to get him up the field and kind of force everybody else to react to him, and just a superb pass on that late restart to go from third to first and drove away from the field. Just wasn't enough at the end of the day to win the championship, but a fantastic win. Also, back-to-back wins at St. Petersburg, which is kind of a theme we've seen here. It's now the third straight time that there's been back-to-back wins by the same driver, which is kind of interesting there as well. But great day from Newgarden, but overall, a slightly better year from Scott Dixon, and deserved the championship 100%. Early season being that hot paid off well for him. And at the end of the day here, Scott Dixon, man, it's remarkable. He's 40 years old now, and looks like he's not slowing down anytime soon. Obviously Takuma Sato's up there at like 43 or something like that now. So like he's still got a few years left at top level performance. So maybe we could see him go out and get that 7th championship here, maybe next season or even a couple of years. Just spectacular. And Chip Ganassi Racing just continues to be the class of the field with Scott Dixon there. It's just truly remarkable what they've been able to do over their history together.
Yeah, he's really brought that organization that next level up, and he's just that powerhouse of a driver over there. He steers the ship in the right direction, and he's going to go down as one of the greatest IndyCar drivers in history. Obviously, the Andretti's have got a stranglehold in terms of I guess, recognition with their last name and everything, but Dixon deserves his place in history after an historic 6th championship. It seems to be a theme here with everybody's going for 7 championships across all 3 motorsports lately. 7 seems to be the magic number, and if you reach 7 championships in a career, you've done something really, really special. So congrats to Scott Dixon, the New Zealander. Brings it home for Chip Ganassi Racing, the number 9 team. Congrats to everybody over there. Commiserations to Joseph Newgarden on putting on an impressive fight to bring it even into the championship race here, putting the pressure on after winning one of the races at Indianapolis at the road course in the last race before the finale. Just didn't quite have enough there. Just didn't quite have that early season performance maybe that he needed to get those podiums, especially early on. But he put on a massive fight. But then also Pato O'Ward, shout out to him for getting a podium place. In 2nd place has been incredible this season for Aaron McLaren. He's really taken a stronghold of that organization, and I expect great things from him next season, man. He's going to be very much in the championship fight if they continue in this direction. I'm pumped to see his progression here. And then do you want to look at the running order just a little bit, Kyle? Just point out some big. So we got Sebastian Bourdais in 4th. It's been a disappointing season, I'd say, for him, but 4th place nonetheless has been is a great result after starting. I think it was 7th place for himself. Yes, it was 7th place. So 7th to 4th there for Sebastian Bourdais. Ryan Hunter-Reay, someone we haven't really talked about basically the entire season. It's been very much underwhelming. Brings it on with a top 5 finish in the finale. Simon Pagenaud as well has been underwhelming this season for Team Penske when you look at Joseph Newgarden's performance and even Will Power on occasion. Brings it home 6th. Marcus Ericsson, former Formula One driver, brings it home 7th there. He's returning to the organization as well next year, so expect good things from him. Graham Rahal was disappointed by his result on Twitter, finishing 9th. Charlie Kimball in 8th. 2 decent results there for both drivers. Obviously, Rahal's had opportunities at winning a race at some points. I feel like that's the story of Graham Rahal's career, is that he's in contention for a win on some weeks, and then he's kind of in the mid-pack on others. So unfortunate there for Graham Rahal to just have a lackluster end to the season, which was actually pretty decent in the end for himself, finishing 6th in the championships. Pato O'Ward finishing 4th in the championship is nothing to hang your head about, young man. You've got a bright future in this sport. Will Power in 5th in the championship standings as well. But that's the kind of the top 10 there. Really, really good from all drivers that they survived the carnage that kind of was St. Pete that this past weekend. Lots of different cautions, lots of opportunities for passing on the restarts, and Newgarden excelled at that to win the race on Sunday. So this season has been, this is our first championship crowned on the home edition of the Green Flag this season. So it's been quite the ride to discuss the IndyCar season basically from start to finish. It's been quite the effort from IndyCar to even put this season on, and had to postpone some races at times, had to reschedule at times, and just the fact that they got a season that's not obviously in full completion of what the normal schedule would have been, but the fact that they have a champion crown, and they come away with a very good end result. I think that it's something to be celebrated on both the organization side of things, on the motorsport, and then also on the driver's side of things, that they didn't have any positive tests this season, if I can recall correctly. So that's very impressive on their side of things. Kept it very safe for the drivers. I'm in bewilderment that they have pulled this off, that sports has been able to do this entire year, and that they've been able to crown champions in a safe manner. So any final thoughts here, Kyle, on the IndyCar season, the finale as a whole, and everything from IndyCar this season?
Yeah, just kind of echoing your thoughts there. It was great that they were able to get the season in the first place. And from there, just Scott Dixon being Scott Dixon, so remarkable to watch. It's unfortunate that he never got a shot in Formula One, but it's fantastic that we've been able to see him an entire career in IndyCar, and going forwards as well. That drive for number 7 now will be fun to watch, and Joseph Newgarden will continue to be a great challenge to him there. But then, of course, I'm glad you mentioned Pato O'Ward there, finished 4th in the championship, 2nd at St. Pete. He 3 second-place finishes there. I'm sure he'll get that first career victory going into next season there with Arrow McLaren SP. And just seeing his performance this season with that kind of new team, given that it was Schmidt-Peterson, but just with the McLaren name now attached to it, was fantastic, because we haven't seen that consistent level from that team in some time. So great to see Pato O'Ward do what he did this season. And also Colton Herta, a very consistent season. I believe only 3 finishes outside the top 10 there, if I'm seeing things correctly here. Very consistent season. Obviously had the win at Mid-Ohio, finished 3rd in the championship. He's still only 20 years old. Going to be great to see what he can do continuing his development here. Year 1, 7th, year 2, 3rd. We'll see what he can do in year 3 now.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of bright young talent, and we've got some great veterans of other motorsports coming in as well.
It's going to be, the schedule is so boring next year, because my God, is it going to be great from a driver lineup standpoint. You've got so many young talents coming up in IndyCar. You've got so many veterans of the sport still in it, and you've got an influx of current talent as well, with Jimmy Johnson stepping in to the road courses. Scott McLaughlin coming in full time. There's still rumors about potentially 1 or maybe even 2 Formula One drivers coming over. We don't know what's going to happen. Silly season's been so crazy, and I can't wait to see what happens going into next year, because already the grid is looking very good.
Would you like to do a little bit of a game here, I guess?
Okay. I'm always good with the game.
What would you say is your most impressive driver of the season? Who impressed you the most? And then maybe your biggest disappointment from just a performance standpoint. I think just kind of to wrap the season up here, excluding, I think, Dixon and Newgarden kind of thing. Yeah. Just they were the class of the field throughout. I mean, Newgarden was 100 points exactly over Colton Herta in 3rd. So those 2 really were the class of the field. So besides those 2, if we're looking at the drivers that partook or took part, in the season that was in 2020, with all the circumstances, who impressed you the most, and who was your biggest disappointment?
I gotta go on the positive side of things. The one that impressed me most, it's Pato O'Ward. He steps in to that Arrow McLaren seat and completely blows expectations out of the water. I don't think anyone was expecting one of those 2 cars to finish top 5 in the championship this season, and if Pato O'Ward had been able to get past Joseph Newgarden there or keep his place there, he would have passed Colton Herta as well for third in the championship, which is something that I don't think anyone expected going into this season. And given the fact that it's his first full-time season in IndyCar, obviously had spot duty last year with Carlin, the chaos that has been his career to this point, great to see him kind of get his feet back under him after what was kind of a up and down kind of couple of years, with winning the Indy Lights Championship with Andretti in dominant fashion, and then kind of the up and down kind of weird scenarios with Harding was expected to be full-time there and then lost that seat because of sponsorship and stuff, and then the going overseas and being a Red Bull reserve driver in Formula 3, I believe it was, and a lot of different stuff. And then finally coming back over with Arrow McLaren and showing what talent he's got. And he's still only 21 years of age as well. He's one to watch going into the future. So for me, in terms of somebody that really kind of overperformed my expectations, it's got to be that Arrow McLaren seat filled by Pato O'Ward.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you there. I mean, how could you not?
It was so.
There's so many words to describe on how well he did this season. It's truly astronomical, the impact that he had on that organization and the performance that he showed. Obviously, it's difficult to compare his teammate and ask you with him sitting out some time, but he was a step ahead of him basically the entire season. And you think back to Gateway or Worldwide Technology Raceway or whatever you want to call it. We'll call it Gateway for the sake of.
I'm calling it Gateway. I don't care.
Yeah, he was in contention in both of those races to win them. Unfortunately, didn't come away with the first IndyCar victory, but the signs that he showed there by leading laps especially and getting a pole position as well this season is no small feat. So I'm very, very impressed with the Mexican-born driver. I can't wait to see the progression. Hopefully he can continue that performance into next season, and he's going to have quite the challenge in Felix Rosenqvist coming over there as well. So it's going to be a very, very fun teammate battle to watch over there at Arrow McLaren. But we'll go to the biggest disappointment, I'd say, or just the kind of the surprise of the season in terms of just not performing to what we had hoped or expected for IndyCar this season. Kyle, there's a couple of candidates for sure, but who stood out to you the most to take that, I guess, not so great honor?
Yeah, it's definitely not as like obvious as Pato O'Ward being the number one there. I think everybody was blown away by Pato O'Ward this season. And yeah, there were some other impressive drivers, of course, and you look down the grid and obviously Herta jumping up to third is very impressive. But I think basically universally everyone would go, yeah, Pato O'Ward was the most impressive this year. For me, it's kind of tough looking at this one because there's a few names that jump out to me. But really, it's kind of, and this might be a cop-out answer, Andretti as a whole, just a very disappointing season from them. They ended up dropping Zach Veach 3/4 through the season. And then even when James Hinchcliffe came in there, wasn't all that fantastic. Obviously, the finale was in line for a podium, but wasn't able to come through there. But you look at what Ryan Hunter-Reay did, 10th place in the championship, 4 top fives, but only one podium finish. Alexander Rossi, very up and down season. We've already talked about it a little bit. I'll probably say Andretti as a whole, but if you want me to pick one specifically, I'll say Ryan Hunter-Reay, just given the fact that, yeah, Alexander Rossi only finished 2 points better than him and finished ninth, but that's because he had a lot more issues and when he was on his game was still that top three threat. Whereas Ryan Hunter-Reay, yeah, he had some issues throughout the season, but seemed much more consistently in that low top 10 range versus Rossi, who when he didn't have those issues was a top 5 threat. So I'll say Andretti as a whole, but specifically Ryan Hunter-Reay.
Okay. I'm going to go with the guy that finished right behind him in the championship in Felix Rosenqvist. I just think even though he got a win this season, I think when you look at the opportunity that he's getting at Arrow McLaren, when you look at this season as a body of work, I don't know if it's necessarily in correlation to get such a highly touted ride as that. I mean, he got a win. Don't get me wrong. That's a great accomplishment. But what we were expecting and the drop-off from Chip Ganassi with Dixon to then the next highest person in Rosenquist in the standings is 11th place is a bit disappointing, I'd say, from that. I mean, Dixon's performance was just incredible to get the race wins and the consistency that he had, but then it was a huge drop-off when you look at his teammates there with Rosenquist and then Ericsson behind him there. So hopefully maybe Jimmy Johnson is the kind of middle ground that they need over there, but I think Felix Rosenquist, when you look at what he had in 2019 and then coming into this season, we expected great things from him. Didn't get any pole positions where he looked so fast in qualifying last season, and we thought that those poles or those really great qualifying results would turn into wins. It was not the case this season, so I'll put Felix Rosenquist. So two guys there right next to each other, separated there by only a mere 9 points. So I think those guys definitely have something to prove for next season. Ryan Hunter-Reay was just I agree with you there on that sense too. Just Andretti Autosport as a whole, though, as well. Just Colton Herta kind of leading that stable, but then everybody else was just not up to par as what we expect. So disappointing from some drivers, but then there's some standout performances in Colton Herta, Pato Award as well. And then who can forget Takuma Sato's great Indy 500 win for that organization of RLL. So I think that puts a nice bow on the present that was this IndyCar season. The fact that we had such a great gift to have motorsports back is a blessing in itself. So we're very, very happy to have covered this past season for IndyCar. I'm sure there's going to be lots more news in terms of filling out the driver lineups for teams over the off season. But it's a late October ending compared to what they usually have in late September. So it's a bit later for IndyCar this past season, but it was a great season nonetheless. So to wrap it all up, how would you rate the season out of 10 here, Kyle, just to give it a nice send-off into the offseason?
It's kind of tough because you're appreciative of what they were able to do, but the amount of back-to-backs and double headers and stuff like that kind of brings it down a little bit for me. So I'll give it a very solid 7.5. I think it was a very strong season. The early season dominance from Scott Dixon kind of brought down the entertainment value a little bit. The disappointing ending to the Indianapolis 500 as well kind of leaves a bitter taste in your mouth. That being said, St. Pete was a fantastic season finale. The fact that there was the possibility of Newgarden somehow coming all the way back and getting the win in the championship. Scott Dixon had to hold on there at the end, and the race playing out very entertainingly as well. So I'll say overall 7.5. Definitely things that could have been better and more entertaining, but overall a very strong season, I would say.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 7. Just half a mark lower than you there. There's some points that were spectacular. I mean, the 8,500 up to that point was a great race. Unfortunately, we didn't get the finish that we did.
Rosenquist going at it late in the race too. That was great.
Yeah, and also I think the gateway races were spectacular too, with the strategy calls and the comers and goers there in that late battle with Takuma Sato and Dixon, a reverse of what the Indy 500 finish kind of was that we were denied in some senses. So I think it's just a 7. It's a above average season, I'd say, but it's not the greatest season I've ever watched in IndyCar. So, but I think 2020 could be an absolute banger of a season. I think 2021, could be an absolute banger of a season with the likes of Jimmy Johnson that we've talked on length in this show, but we can't understate that enough. From the big NASCAR fans that we are, to see him coming over to another North American sport in IndyCar is going to be one of the storylines to watch across all motorsports next season, and how he fares with a championship-winning capable car at Chip Ganassi Racing, as proved by Scott Dixon over the years. So, and then Scott McLaughlin, a premier driver over there in the V8 supercars in Australia, is coming over to a very competitive ride as well at Team Penske. So I'm very, very pumped for next season, and I'm very thankful for the season that was. So any final thoughts here on the IndyCar side of things before we move into a record-breaking weekend in Formula One, Kyle?
Yeah, just thankful that they were able to get the season off. Was happy with how they were able to do things, and that season finale was a good way to send things off. I wasn't huge on what I think it was Paul Tracy with the multiple Tiger King references during the race. I wasn't a fan of that at all. Was not mentally prepared for that. That was a flashback to the beginning of lockdown and quarantine. So didn't need that at all. But yeah, going into next year, man, I'm super, super excited. The schedule obviously isn't as amazing as we would have hoped it to be. There's only 3 oval races on it. In Texas, obviously the Indy 500 and then Gateway. So it's not as diverse a schedule as you maybe hope for. But I'm just really hoping that, what date is it here? On July 11th, I'll be able to attend the race here at Exhibition Place in Toronto, because the schedule, the driver lineup next season is going to be so insane. Jimmy Johnson racing on the streets of Toronto. Like, what? Are you kidding me? Scott McLaughlin racing on the streets of Toronto. What? That kind of stuff. I'm fingers crossed that we're able to attend in person. Hopefully by July of next year, we'll have things under control. But the way things are trending in Ontario, at the very least, it's definitely not going to happen. So let's just hope that we can have next season go off without a hitch, which might be a little ambitious to say, but also I'm excited for the Nashville Music City Grand Prix as well. That's going to be really cool to see. But yeah, definitely some positives going into next season. But the main thing is that driver lineup. I can't wait to see how things shake out.
Yeah, I'm very, very, very thankful for the season that was. And then we're wrapping it up in St. Pete, and we're starting it right back up in St. Pete next time out. So it's a great way to end the season and then to begin the season at the same track as well for next season. So for Scott McLaughlin, hopefully it's a great debut for him next season in his first full-time season at IndyCar. And then Jimmy Johnson making his inaugural race at St. Pete next season is going to be something really, really fun to watch. And then, like Kyle said, we're hoping for a Canadian race next season, and maybe in Formula One if that happens, or in IndyCar as well. So, or if Xfinity wants to come back to Montreal as well, we won't mind that either.
Good luck.
Yeah. We can only dream, man. Oh, man. But
hey, if that happens,
IndyCar, thank you very much for
out to Montreal. That's all I'm going to say.
The green flag on the road is going to be we'll just have the podcast set up outside of the grounds there. We'll just be like, I think something's happening in the track. We're not quite sure, but it's going to be a fun season for next year. But thank you very much to IndyCar, everybody that ran it this season, for giving us a great show, and congrats to Scott Dixon on his 6th IndyCar championship. So that's the IndyCar season in a nutshell over this crazy year that has been. That's IndyCar done and dusted. We move on to Formula One in a potential record-breaking weekend here, with Lewis Hamilton tying the all-time wins record held by Michael Schumacher last time out at the Nürburgring. Had the opportunity to do it in Portugal at Portimao this past Sunday as well. So lots of different records that Lewis Hamilton has already broken in his F1 career. We'll talk about that in a minute here on every single record that he has, because I've got every single record that he has lined up. But we'll start off here with qualifying here on the Saturday for another new track that F1 has never raced at. So a lot of learning curve for the drivers, a absolutely great racetrack. I know that you didn't really get to see it before this, Kyle, but the change going into turn one, the undulation change into turn one, going downhill, left a lot of opportunities for late breakers, and it's just a very unique kind of layout for the track in that first sector, and it provided some great things in qualifying and in the race. So we'll start off with qualifying here in Q3, because I don't want to do the Q1 and Q2 thing this week. We'll just start off with Q3, because there's a lot of different things to discuss there, as Mercedes did their opening Q3 laps on the soft compound tires, and then Bottas finished his run ahead of Hamilton on their first qualifying run in Q3. But then they decided to switch it up. They went to the medium compound tires for both Mercedes cars, and they gave Hamilton the opportunity at 2 runs instead of to Bottas's 1. So that was very, very key at the end of things, as Hamilton gets a lap in, he goes to pole position, and then Bottas completes his one and only lap, and he jumps Hamilton, leaving Hamilton as the last driver to cross the line in qualifying. And what does he do? Wins his 97th F1 pole position at the Portuguese Grand Prix by over a 1/10 of a second over Valtteri Bottas in second, Max Verstappen in third, Charles Leclerc getting a massive P4 there for Ferrari, overachieved expectations the entire weekend. Has been a real bright spot in a very down season for that red Ferrari camp. Perez in 5th, Albon 6th, 3 spots behind his teammate. That gap would grow much larger in the race, which we'll talk about in a second. Carlos Sainz in 7th, beating his teammate Lando Norris in 8th, Gasly 9th, and then Ricciardo spun at the end of Q2, forcing him to not get a lap in Q3, so he would just finish 10th overall. So that sets it up for the Portuguese Grand Prix. So what were you expecting here with Hamilton on pole, Kyle? It seemed like it was all going to be for Hamilton's race for the taking and the record for his taking on Sunday, but that first lap kind of left it up for discussion.
Yeah, it's kind of the classic Mercedes first lap, and what's going to happen is Bottas going to get out to a nice start and maybe jump Hamilton and maybe keep the lead for a little bit, make things interesting, or is Hamilton going to fly away? It was basically going between those two, but it was an interesting qualifying session there with, as you mentioned there, Hamilton getting the pole there as the time expired. And a great lap, 97th pole, which is just unfathomable, really. And so, yeah, going into race day, it was basically just thinking, okay, what's going to happen here between the Mercedes? Is Bottas going to jump them and maybe get an interesting start here to things, and maybe Bottas can spoil the party? Is Hamilton going to jump away and kind of run away with things?
If you want a chaotic first lap, we got you one on Sunday.
Are you kidding me? This was insane.
It was insane. It was probably the least likely thing to ever happen on an opening lap of a race, really, or the first 2 laps of a race. But Portugal delivered in a massive way, as it was kind of raining, kind of not in some parts of the track on the beginning of the race. Just left things up for debate. They all started on the dry tires
later in the day.
Yeah, I guess that weather went across seas throughout the day to make it over to Texas. But Hamilton leads to the first sector of the race, gets a great start. Nobody wrecks into the first corner, which I kind of was surprised at based off of how the corner was. So, but it didn't take long for them to make contact as at the end of the first sector there, just a racing incident between Verstappen, who kept on going off track, extending the track limits to Never Ever Land, and would come back onto the track, and then Perez and him would make contact with Verstappen's right front tire and Perez's left rear, forcing the Mexican driver to spin. Max would continue on. Perez would be forced to pit, but he would later recover, which we'll talk about in a second. But no penalty was awarded to either driver there. It was just dealt as a racing incident, which was, I think, the right case. I don't know if you disagree with that, Kyle, but I think on the first lap of a race there, a totally new circuit and unfathomable conditions there. Very, very difficult to try and get temperature in the tires. People were slipping, sliding around. We'll talk about what happens later on in that first lap in a second, but just the take on the Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez kind of contact.
Yeah, it's just a racing incident here. It's just let them race, essentially. It's one of those first lap deals where it's always going to be something happens. The odds of getting a clean first lap where there's no controversy and no contact and nothing is basically less than 1%, if we're being honest. It's too fast, too close, and so something's always going to happen. I don't think that it was anything really that should have been penalized or anything like that. It's just a racing incident.
We're seeing eye to eye on a lot of these penalties that have been awarded this season. I will admit we haven't differed that much, which has been surprising. But I think clear and cut, that was a non-penalty there at the Verstappen and Perez incident. So we'll move on to later on in the first lap, if you can believe it or not, as Hamilton gets away well in that first sector, but then Bottas chases him to back down, and Hamilton could not get any tire temperature in his car. The Mercedes as a whole could not get any tire temperature because they started on the medium compound tires, which take a longer time to heat up when the soft tire has more grip, and it has a less lifespan, but is faster off the get-go. And they got tire temperature much faster than the Mercedes cars. So that caused Hamilton to fall back behind who else but Carlos Sainz.
Carlos Sainz, of all people.
Who had passed Verstappen and Charles Leclerc, and everybody else had missed all the skirmishes on that first lap. Now, Lando Norris follows him through up to P4 behind Hamilton. Verstappen falls back to P5 on that opening lap. So Bottas leaves after the first lap. So Carlos Sainz in second, Hamilton in third, Lando Norris fourth, Max Verstappen fifth, and who else in sixth but Kimi Räikkönen, who comes up from 16th
Did you see that on board?
to sixth.
Oh, my Lord.
16th to 6th for Kimi Räikkönen on that first lap. The Alfa Romeo in those conditions obviously excels compared to the competition. Incredible stuff to watch from the Finnish driver. I could not believe what I was watching after that first lap. Well, just quickly touch on here. Carlos Sainz passes Valtteri Bottas on the second lap of the race to get to the race lead for the second time this season on pure pace. Nothing really external circumstances. The Spaniard got the first on his pace alone and the talent that he has behind the wheel. You can see why Ferrari wants him for next season. And Mercedes just struggled with the tire temperature there. Bottas would eventually regain a lead there on lap 6. Hamilton, Verstappen would follow suit on the 2 ensuing laps after that. So Sainz falls back to 4th just because the other 3 drivers are just so much quicker. But after they regain tire temperature. But those first 7 laps, Kyle, were probably some of the best laps I've ever seen basically in Formula One, with the amounts of comers and goers as the guys that we expect to be fast off the start fall back, and the guys that in the mid pack and the back half of the pack move forward in a crazy initial start to the Portuguese Grand Prix.
Oh, it was incredible. Anytime you see that much action in the first lap and most of it is clean is fantastic. Like Kimi Räikkönen going from 16th to 6th in one lap is insanity. And just watching the onboard when they posted that afterwards was amazing, because you just kind of see him go nice, kind of steady and calm and take it when he needs to and just kind of get on the power quicker than everybody else and just kind of methodically makes his way up. And then all of a sudden you look up and he's like, oh, that's Max Verstappen in front of him. What the hell is going on? It was insane stuff. So yeah, it just, and then obviously Sainz on lap 2 getting the lead and leading for the second time this season, just like amazing stuff.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. It was nuts. But we'll move on here to lap 18. It's kind of settled down at this point. The guys that we expect to run well had regained their tire temperature, but then once they regained their tire temperature, they kind of wore through the tires pretty quickly. But on lap 18, Lando Norris and Lance Stroll are battling for 7th place, and Stroll tries to overtake Norris around the outside into turn 1. There's definitely space for both drivers coming into the corner. That was not the case at the apex, as Stroll kind of cuts down on Norris. I mean, I stand on one side of things. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the incident, Kyle, but it forced the Racing Point to get spun around. The McLaren driver and Norris gets some damage on the front wing, forcing him to pit. So, and Stroll will get a 5-second time penalty from the stewards as well with the collision. So he would eventually retire as well. The Canadian driver just has had a bad string of luck, hasn't finished a race since the Italian Grand Prix, which is crazy to say. It's been a rough go of things for Lance Stroll since he got that podium in 3rd place there in Italy. And what were your thoughts on the entire incident there, Kyle? It just seemed like Lance Stroll made a mistake going into turn 1 and left Norris no space. Yeah,
that's exactly what it is. It's just I don't know if rookie mistake is kind of the way to put it, but it was just a mental error, just cutting down too soon. And I really don't know what Stroll was trying to do there. There was no chance that he was going to cut down and Lando was going to back out of it and he was going to get the spot or something like that. It was never going to work there. So, yeah, it just an error on his part, and not only ruined his day but affected Lando's as well. And you kind of hear it from the radio from Norris afterwards, and then obviously the post-race comments as well.
Repeat that.
We cannot repeat any of what he said in the car. Oh my goodness!
At least he apologized afterwards.
Yeah,
he felt bad. He's such an innocent kid, you know. He just goes off on Stroll right after the incident. What the heck's that guy thinking? Is just a paraphrase and an extend. And then after the race, he's just like, I'd like to apologize for my comments I made about Stroll. It was just the heat of the moment.
But like,
how can you not love Norris after something like that? Apologize on the radio.
The comments were kind of deserved, because I really don't know what Stroll was doing there. It's just a bonehead move, really. Just yeah, you can't have those mistakes at this point, especially when you're kind of behind the 8 ball after a couple races, not being able to finish because of an array of either mistakes or mechanical issues or whatever. And then this one is very much on Lance in this case, which is unfortunate to see, because not only, again, did it affect his day, it also affected Norris's. But yeah, you can't be making those mistakes at this point of your F1 career.
And it just, this entire incident obviously sparked the whole "why is Stroll staying in that car"
Yeah.
controversy and stuff. I mean, in some respects, it is warranted, but when he's on his game, he's very, very, very consistent and very driven. But on days like today, you have to make that the question kind of arises: why is he getting the ride over someone like Sergio Perez, who doesn't usually put a foot wrong in a lot of the races he does? But it's unfortunate there for Stroll to have a race like that again. And for Lando, I think he just has one of these great races and then just gets caught up in some other people's bad luck and bad driving skills in some cases. So it's not trying to put it lightly. It's blunt, but it's the truth. So we don't want to shy away from that. Even though we can play our Canadian favoritism all we want, in this case, there's no real defending Lance Stroll on this one. So unfortunate there for both drivers that they didn't get the results that they wanted to after being in a points position there, did not get points for either team, which is really compacting that kind of third place in the constructor standings, which is a key role and key funding for next season in the final generation of this car. So it's really, really tight there. Ferrari's obviously taken that giant step or 2 steps back or 3 steps back, whatever you want to call it this season. It's been a massive shift on that side of the camp. Obviously, Red Bull's got that secured with Verstappen's consistent performances on the podium this season, and Mercedes is Mercedes. We've got that third place battle with Racing Point, Renault, and McLaren all up for grabs. They're really, really tight before they get to the Ferrari and the AlphaTauris and then so on. So it's going to be very, very fascinating to see the battle between those 3 organizations going forward. In a situation like this, it's a missed opportunity for both camps to get some valuable points in that crucial midfield battle. So we'll move on to 2 laps later here on lap 20. Hamilton goes back to the lead and passes Bottas. He found something and it really, really worked for him. And once he got to the lead, it was very, very difficult to say that Hamilton was going to lose this race. He had very, very consistent pace compared to his teammate, who was just struggling to keep up with Hamilton. He said he found something after the race, that he came to grips with the racetrack more and more and got more comfortable as the race went on. And it really, really showed in the pace differential between his teammate and Bottas. So really good battles throughout the midfield, like I said earlier, with the guys that struggled at the start really regaining their form and getting to their natural places up the grid. Esteban Ocon went 55 laps before he pitted first time, which was incredible when you look at the tire wear that other drivers had throughout the day. Verstappen said his tires were done within less than 15 laps. The fact that Ocon made his tires last that much longer is a really great skill to see, because not every driver can do what Ocon did. And the fact that he finished in the points as well on top of that is really, really solid for Renault, who capitalized on that incident between Norris and Stroll. So this is it, Kyle. Does it come down to Lewis Hamilton making history? And it does. He pulls it off in spectacular fashion by over 25 seconds over his teammate. Just drove away from the field, got fastest lap near the end of the race as well. So the British driver gets F1 history. He wins his 92nd Grand Prix, breaks the record with Michael Schumacher, a very short-lived tie with Michael Schumacher. And he sets the all-time mark in Formula One with most wins. It's an incredible accomplishment for this driver in Lewis Hamilton. This record was never thought to be broken when Schumacher said it. He obviously raced for a number of seasons afterwards when he set his 91st victory in Formula One back in 2006. And then Lewis Hamilton hadn't even made his debut yet in Formula One when Schumacher set that record. The next season, Hamilton wins his first race at the Canadian Grand Prix, something pretty special there as well for us, seeing that the one of the greatest drivers, if not the greatest driver in Formula One history, maybe even racing history as well, is set his mark in Canada and ends it in Portugal. A nice full circle moment. I was thinking about this. Wins it his first race in Canada, ties it in Germany, wins it in Portugal, sets the new record.
Pretty good for us.
It's a great little kind of spin there for this show. I was really, really happy with how it all turned out. We both got our kind of connection in some senses to the record here with Lewis Hamilton. So what more can you say about this guy? We've talked about him at length for everything that he does on and off the track, especially this season with the Black Lives Matter movement and the social justice issues that have happened throughout the world and the stance that he's taken on that. And he's been basically the face of that in Formula One, especially not just because he's a black person, but in the fact that he stands for racial equality, and he's a great spokesperson for that. So I couldn't be happier that Lewis Hamilton is the guy that breaks the record. He's so deserving of it. He's en route to breaking even more Michael's records, soon to be tying his all-time record in championships. He still isn't signed for next season with Mercedes, so that maybe leaves the question, does he pull a Rosberg at the end of the season? But we'll see what happens with that. But this moment entirely, the entire body of work that Hamilton has done throughout his entire, I guess it is 14-year career now, he just has the greatest win percentage in all of Formula One history at plus 35%. It's incredible numbers. I'll read them off in a minute here, but Kyle, this is incredible. This is like Wayne Gretzky, to put it in North American terms, this is like somebody breaking Wayne Gretzky's goal record. It's a feat that nobody ever thought would be accomplished, but he climbed the mountain and he succeeded to getting that elusive 90-second career win.
It's spectacular. And yeah, we've talked about it over like the past month now quite a bit, just Lewis Hamilton's greatness. But it deserves this much attention because it doesn't get enough attention in the greater mainstream sports realm. This is somebody that is putting up numbers that are the best of all time in a sport where it's difficult to do so. Just look at the gap between now Hamilton and Schumacher in third place in all-time wins. And that really tells you what you need to know about how difficult it is to get 90-plus victories in Formula One. But yeah, these are insane numbers that he's putting up here. And whether it's the 92 wins, the 97 poles that we've already mentioned, and the plethora of other records that we're going to get to in a second here, this is just kind of the icing on the cake. This is the Mac Daddy of them, other than the World Championships. And we'll probably see the World Championships sometime in the future as well, if we're being honest. So just incredible stuff that we're seeing from Lewis Hamilton. I wouldn't want it to be any other driver, just given everything he represents both in the car and out. It's spectacular to see. And I know a lot of people will point to just the Mercedes and how dominant of a car it is. And sure, you need to be in top-level equipment to be able to go out and do these records. But pointing to the Mercedes and saying, look how dominant it is, and then ignoring the fact that Michael Schumacher's Ferrari was just as dominant in the early 2000s as well, it's just pointless, essentially. Of course, the person who sets those records is going to be in a dominant car, but being in a dominant car doesn't mean that you're not a fantastic driver as well. And we've seen that over the years with whether it's second drivers, whether for Ferrari back in the day or for Mercedes now, the level of consistency to be that good week in, week out, no matter the track, no matter the layout, no matter anything, to go out and consistently be the best is just remarkable stuff. So congratulations to Lewis Hamilton. Was so happy that he was able to do it this weekend. Kind of just push that to the side now and kind of push forwards towards what is inevitably another championship this season. And if/when, I hope it's when. I would be shocked if it's an if.
I hope it's when too.
He re-signs for Mercedes going into the future here. We can see him continue to set benchmarks that will probably never be matched. Now, although we did say that about Michael Schumacher's records in the past, so who knows? But these really do feel like some numbers that won't be matched for some time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just so grateful that we've been able to experience this.
Yeah.
Just watching, a lot of people get upset about his dominance, and, it does get tiring at some point in time. But as the mark has come closer and closer and closer, I've began to appreciate it more and more. We talked about it in this show a lot in terms of maybe not appreciating it for what it is in the moment. And I've tried to really take that all in, especially since Jimmy Johnson, I know we talk about him a lot on this show, but this will,
again,
it's rightly so because, those 7 championships, it's something that, is only shared by 2 other drivers in NASCAR history. And who knows that will ever be reached again. It's such a hard feat, especially with this current format. But on Lewis Hamilton's side of things, it's a totally different format where it's consistency across the board. The fact that he has 97 poles, 92 wins. If you just think about that just mathematically, I know he hasn't converted every single pole position to a win, but just think about it in the sense that 5 of those races he hasn't converted pole to a win, essentially. Like, that's incredible things to kind of comprehend, that he's almost perfect when he's on his game, and that's basically every single weekend. So, and it started with McLaren. It didn't just start with Mercedes here. Obviously, he's won over 50 races, over half of the races at least since the current generation with the turbo hybrid era has come into play. but he has a teammate that has the exact same equipment underneath them as he does, but he just takes it that next step further. Obviously, he could be at his 7th, looking at his 8th this season, if not for Nico Rosberg's upset victory in 2016 when he won the title in dramatic fashion. We all remember that, how that ended. But I can't say how much I appreciate what Lewis Hamilton stands as for a person and for what he does on the racetrack. It's really, really impressive. And he did not leave any sort of doubt in anybody's mind on Sunday. He went out there and just drove the wheels off the car, and he got the full 26 points, best race that he can have, really got the pole position. He couldn't ask for a better weekend for Lewis Hamilton to win the race in a great country such as Portugal. So I'm very, very honored to have been able to watch the golden generation, I think, of sports here with motorsports and being a part of the history that has been over the past decade or so. So I would just like to read some stats that Formula One tweeted out today, just the records that Lewis Hamilton currently holds in Formula One. So most race wins, check. He's got 92 of those, just breaks the record, obviously. Most poles, he broke that earlier this season over Michael Schumacher at 97. Most likely he will reach 100 before the season's done if Bottas can maybe step up his pace. Maybe that's not the case, but in all likelihood, Hamilton's looking at 100 career poles in this career of his. Most podiums, he also broke that this season with 161. Most consecutive starts, 262. Then it goes on to most races led, 159. Most races led from start to finish, 22. Most front row starts, 156. Most career points, 3,687. Most points finishes, 225. Most points in a season, 413. Most points in a debut season, 109. Most wins at a home Grand Prix, 7. Obviously, that's at Silverstone. Most circuits won at, 28. Most different GPs won, 27. Most circuits taking pole, 29. Most different GPs taking pole, 27. Most different GPs with podium finishes, 30. Consecutive seasons with a win since debut, 14. Consecutive seasons with a pole position, 14. Consecutive points finishes, 45. Consecutive podiums from debut, 9. Consecutive races led, 18. Consecutive races finished, 45, longest time between first and last world titles, 4,018 days. Youngest world championship leader, 22 years and 126 days. Most wins in a calendar month, 4, and he is soon to tie the all-time record of championships of 7. That was a lot. That was a lot of information, but that just shows you the list of accomplishments that Lewis Hamilton has garnered over his career, and he's not done yet. He still has a little bit of this season left to even go out there and break some more, but he's got all the main ones and then some. He's got no competition in these categories. Obviously, we got the likes of Ayrton Senna that was taken from us way too soon to maybe even challenge at some of these records with the skill that he showed behind the wheel before he was tragically lost in that wreck when he was driving. I think it was in 1994, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that, but don't hold me to that. But the fact that Lewis Hamilton has done this in his career, obviously it's been probably the most dominant era, if not the most dominant era in Formula One history with his current driving with Mercedes. But then McLaren, it all started there as well. He started with such great promise at McLaren, winning in his inaugural season there in Canada, and then just built from there, winning at Monaco, one of the toughest, if not the toughest tracks on the F1 calendar in his second season. There's so many lists of accomplishments for Lewis Hamilton that I just listed off, and he's soon to break even more. So I mean, there's not much else to really say, but just look at the numbers, Kyle. It's undisputed that Lewis Hamilton is one of the greats, if not the greatest Formula One driver of all time. So, I mean, just kind of final thoughts here, I guess, on Lewis Hamilton, because I know we've talked about him a lot on this show, but rightfully so. I know we've said that a lot on the show already, but these guys deserve the praise that they are not getting from the mainstream media, which has left me very, very disappointed from this past weekend. As we exchanged in text, they went to football highlights before they went to this storyline. If this was Wayne Gretzky's goal record, we'd be talking about this for 10 days, a year, how many, it would just be never ending. But something like this for a motorsports fan, even if you're not into F1, you have to appreciate what Lewis Hamilton has done over his entire career here and what could be for a couple more years to come at least.
Yeah, it's extremely unfortunate, but it's also expected because we know the level of attention that motorsport gets in the greater scheme of things, whether it's TSN here in Canada or ESPN in the States. It's just not that same level as it is worldwide. So it's unfortunate in that regard. But yeah, Lewis Hamilton is just a remarkable athlete. And there's different things that could have happened over his career that, as we've kind of mentioned here, could have resulted in him already having the most championships ever. And you look back, obviously, to that Rosberg season in 2016. You look back to his first ever season when he finished 1 point behind Kimi Räikkönen, and the only reason he didn't win that is because of a slight off because of tire wear at Shanghai in the penultimate race of the season. Just incredible stuff he's done over his entire career. From day one, he's been one of, if not the best driver in Formula One. And just this level of dominance we've seen from him over the last 7 years specifically with Mercedes here has just been insane to watch. And yeah, kind of with age is kind of something that happens with where you start to appreciate it more. I remember back when Jimmy Johnson won all those championships, being disinterested with it just because, the same guy wins the championship kind of thing. But as you get older and as you kind of recognize what you're watching isn't going to stay forever, specifically with Jimmy Johnson and watching his decline these last couple of seasons and not having a win likely in his final season here, it gives you that reminder to appreciate the greatness in the moment, not just when it's done. And I think that's something that a lot of people are starting to do here with Lewis Hamilton and seeing all these records and finally turning the page from, oh, great, Lewis Hamilton won another Grand Prix, what an exciting blah, blah, blah. And sure, maybe it's not the greatest entertainment on a Sunday when it's Lewis Hamilton winning by 25 seconds, but at the very least, you can appreciate the talent level to be able to do that on so many occasions, to the point where, and kind of similar to Jimmy Johnson as well, they changed the rules to try and make it so that you can't do it like that. And we'll see that coming up in a couple seasons now for Formula One when things start to even out. And obviously, we'll start to see a little bit more parity across the grid. But for now, at least, it remains Lewis Hamilton's world. And going into next season, he'll be 36. We don't know how many seasons we'll have left of Lewis Hamilton, so we need to appreciate it while we still have it.
Yeah, if this is his final season, it's a great.
Don't put that in the world. Don't put that in the world.
I won't, but
he will at least go for the record world champion.
I feel like it would be a disappointment if he doesn't go for that with everything that the accolades that he has. I just want to make it clear to everybody that this was not luck. Okay, this is pure. This is skill. Excuse me. He had to put himself at the right position at the right time. Making that shift from McLaren to Mercedes was not easy, and the fact that he went to a team that wasn't at the top of its game just yet was almost getting on the rise in Formula One was a very risky move. And if it did not pay off, it could have gone a very different way for Lewis Hamilton's career. But I'm very glad that he ended up giving us the memories that he has in his career so far, and hopefully there's a couple more to come before it's all said and done. So congratulations to Lewis Hamilton. He shared a nice moment with his father, who was at the race as well. After the race, gave him a big hug. Obviously, a great storyline there, coming up through karting, not having too much money, and Hamilton just really getting to where he is on his talent alone. So he's made a great impact in motorsports and in just life in general as well. Has been a great ambassador for the sport. So I'm very, very happy that Hamilton is the guy to break Michael Schumacher's record. And I'm sure Michael, if he was there, he would have been really, really great. He would have really loved it. He said that his records were made to be broken, and I'm happy that benchmarks were made to be broken. So I think Hamilton did him right by getting that record, and we're hoping that Schumacher is doing okay, and it would have been really great to see him there. So we'll just finish up the Portuguese Grand Prix here with what the race results kind of look like. Obviously, Bottas is a distant second, Max Verstappen in third, and Charles Leclerc keeps his fourth place and finishing fourth there for Ferrari. Incredible result there for the youngster Monegasque driver. Pierre Gasly in fifth, Carlos Sainz in sixth, and then Sergio Perez, voted driver of the day after that early spin on the first lap with Verstappen, comes back to finish seventh. So a really solid result there from the Mexican driver. Esteban Ocon in 8th, like I said, nursed those tires for 55 laps and ends up getting ahead of his teammate Daniel Ricciardo in 9th. And Sebastian Vettel gets a point finally in 10th place there. So compared to his teammate, he's just way off the mark this season. Hopefully he can have a fresh start there at Aston Martin next season, and we can see what Vettel's skill is behind the wheel, because Ferrari's kind of given up on him at this point. It's been that case for a long time now, but I think this past couple of weeks have been really, really evident of that. Unfortunately, Kimi Räikkönen's start did not result in a points for himself and the team of Alfa Romeo, finishing 11th, and then Alexander Albon, a really disappointing result in 12th. His seat's on the line here, and it's not out of the question that he won't be returning to that team next season based off of the performance that he's had compared to Verstappen. Obviously, Verstappen is a very talented driver and will probably be the face of Formula One here without question here once Lewis Hamilton is retired. But Albon is leaving that door open for someone to snag that seat like a Nico Hülkenberg, if Sergio Perez. I've heard rumors, I know you have as well, that they're looking maybe outside of the Red Bull system for that second seat to give that next level of performance on a consistent basis. And then what that leaves for Albon, who knows? But there's definitely a lot of circulation and speculation around the paddock that Albon may be on the way out. These two races were meant to be key for him, and he starts off with a very, very disappointing result, sitting outside the points there when Verstappen was challenging Bottas at certain points in the races as well. So overall impressions from the Portuguese Grand Prix, obviously Hamilton is the standout performance, but throughout the entire rundown, there was some standout performances by other drivers as well, Kyle.
Yeah, I think the main thing is just I hope we return here going forwards. Obviously, this wasn't something that was originally on the calendar, something that was created because of COVID here, one of the silver linings, I guess you could say. And I think that it was overall a success. I think that the whole weekend was pretty entertaining. You look at the start to the race especially and how fantastic that was. Hamilton winning by 25 seconds obviously isn't the best result in the world in terms of entertainment, but I hope that they leave the door open here to a return to Portugal going forwards. And it seems like overall fan interest was very high in a debut track in Portimao, and I think that everyone was pretty happy with the outcome as well. So hopefully we can see at least Portugal in general, if not just specifically Portimao, stay on the calendar going forwards.
Yeah, I'm in 100% agreement with you there. I think this season has brought a lot of new opportunities for Formula One to experiment with the calendar, and I think some have been great successes, and some of them have been okay, but they probably won't return to the calendar. But I think Portimao will be a great addition to F1 in 2021 or in the future at some point here, hopefully the short-term future, because when you look at some of the tracks, I think specifically the Spanish Grand Prix, go to there to test. Yeah, go to there for the Barcelona to Catalunya circuit. Go to there to test. Well, I think this would be a great alternative just right down the country road, I guess you could say, in Portugal. And I think it would be a nice replacement for a track like that where it doesn't provide a very entertaining race whatsoever. So I think this one had its great start. Had a couple of dull moments throughout, but I think there was a lot of different overtaking opportunities for the guys after that crazy start. So a great race in Portugal. Congratulations to Lewis Hamilton once again on breaking the all-time wins record, and we're looking forward to you breaking more records here in the near future. And he's en route to his 7th championship in a matter of months. So that's the Formula One race recap, the weekend recap this past weekend. And it's been a great weekend of racing on the IndyCar and Formula One side of things. Obviously, there's no NASCAR Cup race to really dissect yet. We'll wait on that on a later date. We'll have to wait on Chris's threes as well.
I don't hate it because we got to go longer on the IndyCar finale, which is great. And obviously, we got to expand more on Hamilton and the remarkable achievement he had this weekend. So it may be a blessing in disguise.
No, I agree. I think it was great that we didn't have to combine all three in the final episode here. That would be this season. So, but that was not for lack of entertainment on the Saturday and Sunday morning in the NASCAR side of things. So we'll jump into the Xfinity Series race because that was actually first this weekend on the Saturday race. And quite the controversy or quite the finish, I guess, at the end of things there on the second tier of the NASCAR side of things. We'll take a look at the bubble in a minute, but we'll just give a brief overview of what happened in the Xfinity Series race, and that starts off with Chase Briscoe having some issues there early on, mechanical troubles, along with Ryan Sieg as well, had mechanical troubles. So that puts Sieg in a must-win going into Martinsville. Briscoe obviously locked in with the win at Kansas. He was kind of a non-factor really in the entire race, went to the garage, came back, just made some laps essentially. Nothing. So opened the opportunity, opened the door for some other guys to pounce at an opportunity that Chase Briscoe's not in the contention for a win on a mile and a half, which has not been said very much this season. So there's a lot of different kind of storylines throughout the race, but we'll jump to with 25 laps to go because that's where stuff gets real. Like it gets pretty intense. So a huge wreck on a restart with 25 laps to go as Cindric pushes Allgaier into turn one as they were going for the lead. The 7 gets loose, has to correct it. Chastain is on his outside, so they both go up the track, forcing both of them to lose momentum down the back straightaway. And Chastain, I don't know if he's mad or not or what the heck he was doing, but he pinches the 7, and then the 19's on the 7th inside, so they were 3 wide, and then the 7 gets squeezed between the 2 drivers, and it was on from there as all 3 would suffer damage, ending Allgaier and Jones's day. Unfortunately, Brandon Jones would put himself in a very good position there to look at a championship 4 spot, had done all the right things throughout the race. Allgaier seemed to maybe have the fastest car on Saturday, and then Chastain was in the lead for a large portion of the end result there of the race, but those late cautions there just kind of prevented him from getting away from the pack, and he ends up making a catastrophic mistake. He would spin, would return, I think it was a lap down or so. I don't know if he stayed on the lead lap or not, but the massive implications for Jones and Allgaier in terms of just getting that cutoff line even closer going into Martinsville was huge. But Chastain at fault here has made quite a few of these mistakes, I'd say, this season, Kyle.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like it was an anger thing there, trying to do too much. And I don't know if he didn't know that there was that many cars down low and thought he could pinch Allgaier more or something like that. But just something that was unnecessary when he was in the position to pick up more points that he needs to get if he's going to get a spot in the championship unless he wins a race here. So just a bad mistake from Chastain. Retaliatory didn't need to happen. And I think the comments from Allgaier afterwards were kind of justified. And even Chastain said it was his fault himself after the race, and affects a lot of people's finishing positions, affects a lot on the playoff cutoff line there because in the Xfinity Series it's just so close, but ended up playing into the favor of a couple other people. Yeah,
the remarks that Allgaier made about Chastain, as Kyle said there, he called him two-faced. So Chastain, I agree in some respects. I know it's a bit harsh to say something like that to another human being, but Chastain does talk the talk, and then sometimes he walked the walk in a sense. This time he admitted to it, and sometimes that's not always the case, but he's a very aggressive driver. He provides a lot of entertainment on Saturdays, and we're looking forward to seeing that on Sundays in the 42 car for Chip Ganassi next season. But it's times like these where you question a little bit if Chastain is ready for that next step into the Cup Series next season. So it tightens up that battle. It took Chastain out of a chance of winning the race, his first race of the season, and it presented the opportunity here for 2 guys in Austin Cindric and Noah Gragson, who got together last weekend at Kansas. So on the restart with 15 laps to go, Cindric gets loose, slides up out of the groove in turns 3 and 4, presenting the opportunity for Noah Gragson to go up the inside and take the lead. And it was kind of his race from there, it seemed. It was very, very much the case for the junior motorsports driver. Came in here almost in a must-win, if not a must-win. And it was all but guaranteed there late on. Harrison Burton had spun early on as well in the final stage, won stage 2. So he was looking very competitive, had worked his way back up through the field, up to 3rd there on that last stint. Anthony Alfredo there in 2nd, holding him at bay for as long as he could, but Burton got past, I think, with around 2 laps to go it was. So then he had his set sight on Noah Gragson, but it was going to be quite the task for him to regain about 0.7 of a second there in a matter of 2 laps. So Gragson goes on to win at Texas. Oh, no, he doesn't. He doesn't, does he? Oh, he does not.
Wow.
Incredible. I can't understate that enough. Harrison Burton gained 0.7 of a second in a lap and a half on Noah Gragson. I don't know what the heck he was doing. He was on a Sunday stroll or something, but Harrison Burton said he had never driven a car faster than he had on those last half a lap into turns 3 and 4, and you can see why. He chased down Noah Gragson, something that the broadcasters were doubting. I'd already written in my race notes Noah Gragson had won at Texas. I had texted Kyle. I had predicted him in my championship 4. It's quite the text chain. I had him last week. So with the Kansas incident, I said, can I take back my Gragson prediction? And then I said, here, with 5 laps to go, can I take back my take back of my Noah Gragson prediction? And then after the race, I said, can I take back my take back of my take back of my Noah Gragson prediction? So a whirlwind of emotions here for myself.
My goodness.
But Harrison Burton, what a drive to get up to that point where he could get past Gragson. Gragson got tight out of turn 4, it seemed, and Gragson just slid up the track, presenting the opportunity for Burton to just roll on by. I mean, essentially, Burton gained a second on that last lap with the differential at the end. It's incredible. You don't see that kind of stuff. You would not see that in the NASCAR Cup Series, let me tell you. We saw that last week. Took 40 laps, and we couldn't even see anything from Harvick on Logano. But it took a matter of a lap and a half just to see the superiority of Burton's car and his driving ability there in some senses over Noah Gragson. Wow. What more can you say about the young Burton? Obviously, Jeff Burton, I texted this as well to you. Give me a video of Jeff Burton in the booth. They did right after that. And obviously a great moment there for Jeff Burton. As much as I may not be the biggest fan of him in the broadcast booth, it was great to see that father and son kind of combination there. Reminded me, in some senses, I know it's a bit different, but to the 2001 with Darrell Waltrip and Michael Waltrip winning the Daytona 500 kind of thing there, where he was so happy for him kind of thing. So I was pumped to see the reaction there from Burton showing that emotion. Obviously, he can't talk like and scream out, yes, my son won. He can't do that, but he kept it professional, and Harrison Burton comes away with the victory in spectacular and upset fashion, presenting Noah Gragson from an automatic berth at Phoenix in 2 weeks' time, Kyle.
Huge turnaround in that one corner. For starters, that's one of the most impressive laps I've seen in a long time, especially on ovals. You just don't see somebody make up that much time ever in the span of one lap. And the consequences of the playoffs, Gragson goes from being locked in and completely blowing up that bubble to being in another must-win scenario. It's really remarkable how much changes in that one corner there. And on top of that, now 2 people will make the championship 4 on points as well. So crazy stuff there in the Xfinity Series, as it's been all season long, and leaves the door open for what I'm certain will be a chaotic Martinsville. Oh my goodness. It's going to be crazy.
It's going to be crazier than what we anticipated Bristol to be because of what the implications are here. I mean, on the Cup Series side, for
and we've got even more angry drivers now.
We've got angry drivers in the Truck Series, which has been a recipe for disaster in that race many occasions. And then we've got an Xfinity Series race where they haven't raced many of these guys ever at Martinsville. Some of the Truck Series guys obviously have a little bit of experience, including Noah Gragson. So maybe he has a little bit of an edge there, but overall, this has just been an incredible weekend at Texas Motor Speedway thus far. It's unfortunate we haven't seen a Cup Series race yet because of what we've seen so far, but incredible results for a lot of these guys. Stand-up performances, obviously, with Harrison Burton there. Gragson was dejected, said the F-bomb on TV afterwards. I mean, he just let it slip. I mean,
I think he gets a pass for that one.
Yeah, I mean, it was quite the expletive-filled weekend with both the finger gesture and the F word. So we had quite the different opportunities there with those guys. But notable finishes here because there was quite a few after some of the big guys had some problems that presented the opportunity for some guys to get some really great runs, including Anthony Alfredo there in third, held off Burton for as long as he could. But obviously Burton had race-winning speed behind him, so not
last
the
race
easy
of the
task
year for him.
he held Alfredo off for longer than Gregson did, that's for sure. So it was quite the feat there. So impressive stuff from the 2021 car. Hopefully he gets something locked up next season full time, because he's really, really deserves that. When he comes into the Xfinity Series, he does exceptional things for RCR. So hopefully they lock him up full time next season. Austin Cindric in fourth after getting loose on that restart. Could have automatically punched his ticket to Phoenix. Is still in a bit of a rough situation going into Martinsville. He's by no means safe. Only plus 14 to the cutoff line from such a dominant season in a lot of respects, being up there with Briscoe, to only be plus 14 going into an unknown like Martinsville. It can't make Austin Cindric sleep very easily. He's going to have to sleep with one eye open, I think is what he said after the race as well. So Brandon Brown in fifth. Incredible run for that team. A top 5 finish on a 1.5 mile track. Obviously was disappointing to not make it to this round of 8 after getting eliminated last round, but making the playoffs in itself is an incredible accomplishment, and a top 5 at a track like Texas is no easy feat. So congratulations to those guys on getting a top 5 finish. Michael Annett in 6th, just underperforming in JRM equipment, but a 6th place finish nonetheless for Michael Annett. Justin Haley in 7th there. He was in contention there late on in the race for a win maybe, but just got shuffled back on the restarts, and he didn't quite have the speed needed to be in contention up there with the front guys. Josh Williams in 9th place, 2 consecutive top 10 finishes for that team. Incredible stuff from the 92 team. I think that's his 3rd or 4th top 10 of the season, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that, but a career year for Josh Williams, and it's been quite the sight to behold for that driver and that team. Alex Labbe, the Canadian, in 11th place. Really, really solid run for him. Doesn't usually run that well in the 1.5 miles, which just based off the equipment, but 11th place is something that team can be really, really proud of. Bailey Curry there in 12th place. Matt Mills in 13th place, Brett Moffitt in 14th, and Jesse Little in 15th place. But then Ryan Vargas also gets a top 10 finish as well. These are career top 10s for both Ryan Vargas and Tommy Joe Martins. So incredible stuff from those two guys. I wanted to point them out specifically because it is such an accomplishment for them to get their first career top 10 finishes in the Xfinity Series. Tommy Joe Martins has had quite the up and down season. Feels like he's been denied of top 10 finishes on multiple occasions, which has been the case. Just hasn't gotten the results when he's been in contention there for that top 10. And then Ryan Vargas, Kyle, newly purchased TikTok car, a T-shirt that we posted out on our Instagram page with the clip that of you finishing the purchase, holding up at the end of the bargain. He did quite the job to make you even realize that you needed to buy it this weekend. Obviously, you'd already placed the order, but if you'd waited this weekend, he'd done an exceptional job behind the wheel of the number 6 TikTok car. So JD Motorsports can be really, really proud of that driver and that team bringing home a top 10 finish at Texas. So a lot of great storylines there for the Xfinity Series. Harrison Burton winning, and a lot of notable names in that top 10 that we don't usually see on a regular basis in the Xfinity Series, Kyle.
No, and it's great to see a small team with Tommy Joe Martins there. As you mentioned there, it has looked like a couple times this season that they might get that top 10 and something's gone wrong. And it's been to the point where Tommy Joe Martins after the race was disappointed that he didn't get that 8th place finish for the team. Just a fantastic day for them. Great to see those small family-owned teams do well. And, of course, Ryan Vargas. Everyone loves him on Twitter and on social media. Great to see him get this opportunity with JD Motorsports to end the season. In the TikTok car, the crew neck is in the mail. I can confirm. Will be making his debut on the show sometime soon, hopefully. But yeah, a remarkable run for them as well. We're down a couple laps at one point and came all the way back to finish 8th, which is incredible stuff from that team. And hopefully, obviously, we know Tommy Joe Martins will be back full time next season. Already confirmed that team's coming back, which is going to be great. Hopefully, they can continue to progress up the grid. And hopefully Ryan Vargas as well can parlay this 6-race deal into something even bigger next year, maybe even full-time. So fantastic couple results for both of those guys, as with multiple other ones. Obviously, Bailey Curry there, finishing 12th, getting some stage points as well. Alex Labbe, always great to see him get a top 15, especially on an oval. So a lot of very impressive days given some of the issues that some of those playoff drivers had.
One of the races of the season in the Xfinity Series, in my opinion. It was incredible. Lots of comers and goers, battles for the lead. The big names had some troubles, which was great, especially in a playoff race where you don't usually see that. The pressure's on the line, and a lot of guys fumbled under that pressure. So it leaves the door wide open at Martinsville, and we'll take a look at the playoff bubble now. Obviously, like I said, Austin Cindric is the highest above the cutoff line right now at plus 14 points, which is not a slim margin by any, not a large margin by any means, excuse me. And then we've got Justin Allgaier in third or second above the cutoff line at plus 8 points, and then Justin Haley at plus 4, the last guy above the cutoff line. Very, very slim margins. That's one stage win or a couple of positions there throughout the race that can make a difference there. So Brandon Jones is the first guy below the cutoff line. That wreck there just took him out of contention there. He was inside the top 4 spots there the entire race, but that incident there really hurt him, especially with Allgaier too. He had a good points gap before that, but he's not going in there any safer into Martinsville next weekend. Ross Chastain there, the second guy below the cutoff line there in 6th place. Minus 15 for him. What could have been for Ross Chastain once again? He's kind of stumbled here in the playoffs at some points, especially on the mile and a halves. Just hasn't quite got the results that he's needed, and he goes into on a very aggressive racetrack that can reward the aggressors and also, I guess, hurt them in a sense. So it's going to be interesting to see how Chastain plays that. We'll talk about that later this week and what to expect at Martinsville. Noah Gragson minus 24. What could have been for him a automatic spot in that championship 4 to minus 24, the third guy below the cutoff line. He's going to need a very great day at Martinsville if he wants to even think about pointing his way in. It's almost a must-win for Gragson, but it's not out of the question. He's got some previous experience there. He's won a race there in the Truck Series as well, so don't count out Noah Gragson just yet. He's going to be out there for vengeance after a disappointing last corner there to lose this one at Texas. And then Ryan Sieg to finish it all off, minus 43. It's going to be quite the task if Ryan Sieg makes it into the next round. It's going to need a win for sure. If he does, incredible storyline that would be, but I think Ryan Sieg and that entire 5 full-time employee team can hang their head held high after this incredible season that they've had. So unfortunate how it ended there in Texas. Could have been in a better situation if they just ran the entire race and got some stage points, but that mechanical problem, like we talked about last week, they had to turn this car around from Kansas to Texas. Maybe that had something to do with it, just the lack of turnover time for that team. So lots of great storylines going into Martinsville to keep your eye on. Maybe an upset victory and someone like Gragson can get him into the championship 4. But any final thoughts here on the Xfinity Series before we wrap up today's show on the Truck Series, Kyle?
Yeah, just a great race at Texas, really. Fantastic finish. Lots of fireworks going into Martinsville.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more there. And we go to fireworks in the Truck Series as well. Incredible race at Texas. The mile and a halves and the cold temperatures really presented a lot of drafting opportunities in this one. And there's definitely lots of controversy to talk about. We'll start off with a playoff guy and Grant Enfinger blowing a motor there kind of in the third stage. Goes into Martinsville in a must-win situation, as a lot of guys do in the Truck Series. Definitely not a tight bubble battle going into Martinsville. So we'll move on to 25 laps to go. It seems to be the magic number this weekend. Can we go 3 for 3 for the Cup Series later on this week? But 25 laps to go. Johnny Sauter drives into turn 1 way too deep and gets loose underneath Stuart Friesen, taking both drivers out. Sauter's team was not too pleased with him over the radio after the incident, saying the problem is that you know better than that. I can't believe you did something like that. And understandably so. I mean, that was a very rookie mistake by Johnny Sauter. He's had a couple of those this season. You think back to Michigan a little bit as well, battling for the lead there. It's been a very disappointing season for Johnny Sauter, from failing inspections, getting point penalties, to having bad results on the track and then just getting frustrated. You wonder if maybe this is the end for Johnny Sauter at Thorsport. He's had a couple of down seasons, I'd say. He's not the premier driver that we once saw in the Truck Series with the young talent that's come up. So you wonder if this is maybe the end for Johnny Sauter after another incident this season, but just a disappointing result there. And for Stuart Friesen, was in the right position after having that week off at Kansas for the dirt race, comes back with a vengeance here, and it seems like he's on route for maybe a triumphant win, a turnaround win for that team after a disappointing season, all to be denied by a classless act, I'd say, from Johnny Sauter.
Yeah, just a brutal mistake from him and just trying to do too much. And on the broadcast, they tried to compare it to the move that Friesen made for the lead, which
Oops,
is
a
not
lot
even
before, so.
remotely comparable because Friesen had the advantage going into the corner, was almost clear, and had to dive it into the corner to clear. The difference in this situation is that Sauter was not even a nose in front. In fact, he was kind of still on his quarter panel and tried to dive it into the corner and tried to see what would stick. And instead, he just drives up into his door, gets loose, and they both wreck. Just really disappointing to see from Johnny Sauter. He knows better than that, trying to force it, and instead it ruins another guy's day who has had largely a very down season and was looking to have a positive finish there in Friesen. So I don't know what's going to come for Johnny Sauter here, but he probably needs to have at least a couple positive results here. I don't know what the situation is at Thorsport, if they have any drivers that maybe could be filling seats, but it's been a very disappointing season to miss the playoffs and just be this lackluster all season long and just make mistakes like this.
Yeah, it's just been one thing after another for that 13 truck this season, and it's not looking like it's getting any better. So we'll see what happens in the offseason with Johnny Sauter, but disappointing there for Stuart Friesen, who had a shot at a victory, gets denied that by an inexperienced, or not inexperienced, but just a reckless move, I'd say, from Johnny Sauter. So we move on to another reckless display of driving by Ben Rhodes here with 5 laps to go. The front two of Austin Hill and Sheldon Creed had kind of pulled away with Christian Eckes and Ben Rhodes battling there for third. Rhodes in a kind of a must-win coming into this race, was in contention there late on. Creed was kind of slowing everything up there, but Ben Rhodes just being an absolute idiot. There's no other way to really describe it. It was so stupid. I can't believe he did it. But Eckes pushes up the track in turns 3 and 4. Rhodes took it as he put him into the wall kind of thing. Where else am I meant to go? Rhodes did not hit the wall. He came off the wall in a sense where he just kind of turned left and right into the right rear quarter panel of Christian Eckes for no reason. He says that he was frustrated by what the 18 truck did to him, but from the replays and everything that was shown, there's no argument there for Rhodes. He knows what he did inside the truck. He said that I know what happened inside the truck, but I think we can tell from the external images what also happened in the truck as well, Mr. Rhodes. So it was interesting to see his take on it after the race. I'm glad that Alan Cavana kind of challenged him on it and said, you know, that this is not going to be the popular opinion by many people that what you did. He's like, that's fine. So, and then Eckes gave him the old double dirty bird on the front straightaway.
I loved that.
So, and then obviously that's a great image there. We got great pictures of it. So, I mean, does there lead to retaliation? I would think so. Rhodes had a couple of incidents throughout the season like this. He took out Todd Gilliland early on in the race for a very similar bad driving move, going in on his quarter panel, I guess, and then cutting down his right rear tire, sending Gilliland spinning, and then Rhodes goes away clean. So it definitely took away from what I thought Ben Rhodes was as a driver this past weekend. I thought he was better than this in terms of his mindset and just not letting these things get to him, but that was clearly not the case. And he would later on wreck on the final lap in NASCAR overtime as well. He said that the 51 got into him. We haven't seen a real clear replay or anything on that incident, so I can't make a definite confirmation on if that happened or not, but that's what he says. The 51 wrecked him for getting back at him for wrecking his teammate. And then unfortunately, Josh Bilicki was just an innocent bystander and got taken out in that incident as well. But what's your thoughts here? And NASCAR did not red flag, or not red flag, black flag, excuse me, Ben Rhodes for the incident, which is similar in some cases to the Ron Hornaday Kyle Busch incident that happened back in 2011. Obviously, that was under caution, and Kyle got hot-headed. I'm not going to deny anything that he did that night. It was very stupid on his part. But this is similar in terms of retaliation in a very dangerous sense. It could have, Eka said he was sore, rightfully so. I mean, he went head-on into the outside wall at 150, 60 miles an hour. It's no joke what Rhodes did there. He can't just brush it off like nothing happened. So what are your thoughts there on the entire incident? I know we texted about this a little bit because it was quite the controversy there with Rhodes and Eckes.
Yeah, for starters, I'm not going to compare it to the Hornaday Bush incident because I think that's a completely different level. But this situation, I don't see how you can't black flag Ben Rose here. You need to set that precedent that this is not okay. And I don't know why they didn't, whether it's because he's a playoff driver and is close to the cutoff line and needs points and something like that. I really don't know why. It was clear what happened. It was intentional. It could have injured the driver. It seemed to definitely affect him. He mentioned that he was sore. He looked kind of banged up after the wreck. I really don't know why he wasn't black flagged. And this is a dangerous precedent to set because we know going into Martinsville, something's going to happen there, whether it's Eckes himself or somebody else with Kyle Busch Motorsports. I'm pretty damn certain that something's going to happen there. And NASCAR after that is going to penalize people. But you save that if you black flag him in the first place in this one. So it's just a dangerous precedent to set. I don't know why they didn't black flag him. It's a stupid decision, in my opinion. And while I am very intrigued to see how things play out at Martinsville, it's probably not going to be the best for the sport.
Ben Rhodes has got a lot to lose next week compared to these other guys that are outside the playoffs. So
Yep.
There's definitely some retaliation maybe on the cards for next weekend at Martinsville. It's the perfect opportunity to do it. If you're going to do it, why not do it at the bump and run track of Martinsville? So they had an altercation in the garage area after the race. Eckes was waiting for Rhodes, and they got into a little bit of a fight, if you want to call it that. They were kind of separated pretty quickly, it seemed, after exchanging some words. Didn't quite get a full video or anything on it, but I mean, Eckes was visibly upset, and I think that's very justified in how Rhodes handled the situation in both the media and on the track as well. So it'll be very, very interesting to see if that 99 truck is backwards into the outside wall at some point at Martinsville from the nose of a KBM truck. So there's a lot of guys knocking on Ben Rhodes' door. Todd Gilliland can be another one as well, getting taken out again. I'm sure he can't stand for it much longer as well. Just hasn't done anything really wrong this season. Just has got taken out by some other guys for nothing of his own doing. So there's a lot of guys probably has Ben Rhodes' name or number written down as something that they could go out there and try and hit at Martinsville. But we'll move on to NASCAR overtime here. Sheldon Creed was determined the leader at the moment of caution. It seemed like Hill had gotten by, but based on the last scoring loop, it seemed like Sheldon Creed had lost the lead, but it was not to be the case. So with a great push into turn 3 on the inaugural or the first lap of NASCAR overtime from Brett Moffitt, his teammate, Creed goes to lead past Austin Hill, and he would never look back. Sheldon Creed wins the NASCAR Gander RV and Outdoors Truck Series race at Texas Motor Speedway for his 4th win of the season, joining his teammate and Brett Moffitt as the two drivers clinched into the championship 4 at Phoenix. It was an incredible win for Sheldon Creed. I had him in my championship 4. You didn't, but I've got this one right here at least. So incredible win from Sheldon Creed here.
Yeah, spectacular display all day long. Great to hold on at the end there. And yeah, Sheldon Creed is a great driver when he's on. And the only reason I didn't pick him was just because I thought that maybe the aggression would result in maybe a wreck at some point. But no, he's been fantastic these first 2 races of this round.
You picked the other guy that we talked about.
Well, geez, no kidding. I butchered that one. But a great display from Sheldon Creed. I'm very happy that he's in the championship 4. Has definitely deserved it this season, has taken that next step, and obviously will run for the championship this year. But now that we know he's back at GMS next year as well, I think he's going to be for sure one of those top 3, at least top 4 guys running for the championship next year as well.
Yeah, for sure. We'll look at the notable finishers from this Truck Series race. Zane Smith in 3rd behind Austin Hill and Sheldon Creed, obviously. Great result for Zane Smith. He had a little bit of mechanical issues early on, recovered to finish 3rd, which is really, really solid. Rafael Lessard in 4th place. Really great result for him. After that win at Talladega, had that rough go at Kansas, recovered here at Texas this weekend. Austin Wayne Self in 7th place. Haven't heard too much from him this season in the Truck Series, but I saw a top 10 run. Dylan Lupton in 8th. Incredible run for that kid. You see him on here and there throughout the season, but a top 10 result at Texas is really, really solid for him. Tyler Hill, Austin Hill's brother, finishing 11th place. Obviously, the lesser known of the Hill brothers, but Tyler Hill bringing it home 11th is he had a great intro as well, standing like kind of lying next to his car. I saw Austin Hill kind of tweet out there as well, so it was pretty cool to see. And then Chase Purdy in 12th place in the 24 truck, kind of the forgotten GMS entry this past weekend, but Chase Purdy goes in there on part-time basis, so getting 12th place is not too bad for him. Jordan Anderson in 13th place, Spencer Boyd 14th, and then James Busher in 15th place. The return for him to the Truck Series this weekend for Nice Motorsports, finishing top 15 is really solid for him after being out of the trucks for 5 years. I think he'll take that all day long at Texas Motor Speedway. So, and then Donnie Bond, if I'm pronouncing that, Danny Bond, excuse me, if I'm pronouncing that right, finishing 17th. Dawson Cram in 18th, and then Josh Bilecki was going to get a top 15 run there for that, if not for that last incident there, but finishing 19th, the last truck on the lead lap. So those are the notable finishers from the NASCAR Truck Series race at Texas Motor Speedway. Let's take a look at the quick bubble, what it's looking like going into Martinsville before we wrap up today's show. 2 spots left go into the championship for this one, with 2 wins from 2 playoff guys in the 2 races thus far. Austin Hill goes in there pretty comfortable, plus 27. I think you can almost lock him in to the championship race, forbidding anything bad happening and a guy below the cutoff line knocking him out if he has a bad run. But Austin Hill looks to be in pretty good shape. Zane Smith is the last guy above the cutoff line, plus 12 points over Matt Crafton, who's minus 12. It's going to be down to those 2 guys if they want to point their way out. Everybody else is in a must-win situation, with Grant Enfinger minus 42, Ben Rhodes minus 45, and then Tyler Anker minus 79. So not even close for either of those 3 guys. It's going to come down to a win at Martinsville if they want to make it to the championship 4. So what are your overall thoughts from the Truck Series racing going into Martinsville for the Truck Series, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, Martinsville is always a wild card, and I'm excited to see how that will play out, given how many drivers are in that must-win scenario. It's really just kind of Crafton that can point his way in, and even then, he needs a big points day if he's going to pass Zane Smith. So a lot on the line in both series, of course, with the last race going into the championship race. But definitely unlike the Xfinity Series, where it's very close and multiple drivers can still point their way in, this one's all over the place. And it's really just a couple guys can point their way in. One guy feels very comfortable at the top there in Austin Hill, and then everybody else needs to win. So interested to see how that will affect the racing, the strategy calls, and of course the aggression. So yeah, very excited for Martinsville coming up, which is kind of weird to say given we still don't have the Cup race from Texas, but.
Yeah, it does feel a bit of an off kind of race recap kind of episode. But nonetheless, it's been a great episode to discuss. I'm glad we got to dedicate more time to Scott Dixon and Lewis Hamilton, rightfully so. And we'll have the race recap of the Cup Series race later on this week, probably in our Thursday episode if they have it done by then. But make sure to stay tuned for that. We'll also have the Martinsville Fantasy preview for that race as well in that one. So lots going to be happening on Thursday. Just when you think we might have a bit of a shorter episode on Thursday after a jam-packed weekend, they make us wait a couple more days. So we'll keep you updated on the NASCAR Cup Series race from Texas Motor Speedway whenever that occurs. But it's been a jam-packed weekend of racing and some great racing across the board. A champion was crowned at St. Pete. Records were broken in Portugal, and some insane finishes with some controversy and a upset in the NASCAR Xfinity and Truck Series. So any final thoughts here, Kyle, before we sign off today's episode?
Yeah, just looking forward to whenever we can race at Texas, and then finally end what was a very strong weekend in motorsports and go ahead into the penultimate weekend in NASCAR. Crazy that we're at this point in the season, but stay tuned at the Green Flag. We've got you covered here. Make sure to go follow us on our Instagram at the Green Flag. Put out a graphic there for Lewis Hamilton's 92nd win to commemorate that. If IndyCar would release some photos, maybe I could get a Scott Dixon one out there later this week, but if they don't want to, sorry for all the fans out there that are looking for the graphic. But nonetheless, I've been Lucas Wacker. He's been Kyle Cushman. Signing off for now. We'll talk to you later this week when hopefully the NASCAR Cup Series race is completed, and we'll have much more news to talk about later on this week. So stay safe, everybody, and have a great rest of your week.